My name is Samantha. I'm 38 years old and live in Austin, Texas, a city lively enough to hide the loneliness of daughters who always have to be strong simply because there's no other choice. I'm a financial advisor. My clients call me the one who steadies the ship in a storm, but within my own family, I'm just the responsible older sister, the one always expected to give way to my reckless younger brother, Tyler. If I had a dime for every time my mother said, "He's just confused, you have to understand him," I could have retired at 30. From an early age, our roles in the family were assigned without audition. I was the serious, quiet eldest daughter who made the adults proud. Tyler, 3 years younger, was the boy with teary eyes and a disarming smile, forgiven no matter how much trouble he caused. He once burned down the garage playing with a lighter, stole the class fund, dropped out of college halfway, yet was always excused with, "He's just trying to find himself." And me? When I earned a full scholarship, my dad just nodded. "Well, that's expected." When I worked part-time to pay off student loans, my mom only said, "You're strong, a little struggle won't kill you." It was as if every good thing I did was just my duty, while every mistake Tyler made was a forgivable accident. I still remember the night Tyler called me in tears, confessing he was nearly $30,000 in debt from online sports betting. I remember my mom's heavy sigh when I said I couldn't lend him money. "You work in finance? Can't you help him just a little?" she said, her voice cracking as if I were heartless for letting my brother drown. And Tyler? He coolly texted me his bank account info without even a thank you. Caught in that cycle of emotional exhaustion, the only person who ever truly saw me, listened to me, and believed in me was my grandmother, Margaret. That tiny woman once ran a furniture manufacturing company solo for 20 years after her husband passed. No one expected a 50-year-old widow to revive the family business, especially in a time when ambitious women were still considered too much. But she did, and she did it well. Grandma Margaret didn't speak often, but when she did, her words stuck. I'll never forget the summer I was 15 when I skipped camp to help her audit some ledgers. She didn't smile or praise me. She simply said, "You've got the mind for big things. More importantly, you're not afraid of responsibility. That's what the world needs." From then on, I spent every summer at her workshop. While my parents and Tyler went on vacations, baseball games, and family reunions, I sat in Grandma's dusty old office learning how to read balance sheets, how to ask the right questions, and how to hold my ground even when others called it stubbornness. She taught me that financial independence is the first, and maybe only, kind of freedom a woman should fiercely protect. When I turned 18, she gave me a gift I've never forgotten, an investment account in my name, seated with exactly $3,500. I had helped her tally that summer. "You earned it, so you'll know how to grow it," she said. And I did. I used it to launch my journey, earning a degree in finance, then an MBA, and later my investment advisor certification. While Tyler bounced from one community college to another and burned through cash on startup ideas without even a business plan, I worked my way up to partner at the third largest financial consulting firm in Austin. But success isn't a thick enough shield to protect you from the knives that come from behind, especially when those knives are held by the ones you love. I don't know exactly when my parents started seeing me as an ATM. Maybe it was when I bought my first house or when I finished paying off my student loans. But I knew that vision had solidified into an ugly truth the day I received the news of Grandma Margaret's passing, and that her entire estate was about to fall into the very hands she once warned me never to trust. Margaret passed away on a March morning, when late-season snow still dusted the edges of the roads. I was in San Antonio giving a talk at an investment conference when my phone buzzed. The voice on the other end, her attending doctor, softened the moment I confirmed who I was. She passed at 6:13 a.m. in her sleep, no pain. I froze in the corridor of a 5-star hotel as if someone had just punched me in the chest. I returned to Austin in silence. The red brick house where she'd lived alone for nearly 30 years felt colder than ever. The old photo frame still sat neatly on the fireplace mantel. Me in my graduation gown, her arm around my shoulder. Her smile tilted like she already knew I'd go farther than she ever dared to dream. The funeral was simple, with only around 20 close friends and family. Tyler showed up nearly an hour late, blaming traffic, wearing a brand new leather jacket. My parents, Carl and Linda, sat in the front row, trying to appear sorrowful, though my mother kept glancing at the family lawyer. The will reading was held 4 days later in her third-floor office on Congress Avenue. The lawyer, Raymond Knox, a longtime friend of Margaret's, was bald, wore a turtleneck, and had a calm but razor-sharp presence. Once we were seated, he said gently, "This will was last updated 6 months before Margaret passed. She instructed me to ensure every word remained exactly as she wrote it." My father nodded. My mother gave a tight smile. Tyler yawned. And then Raymond began. "Margaret left me, and only me, the core of her estate, the historic house near Lake Travis, the family heirloom jewelry collection, and an investment portfolio with a market value close to $2.1 million. That inheritance came with 3 conditions. The house could never be sold and must be preserved as a family landmark. The investment portfolio was to fund a nonprofit scholarship in her name, and the jewelry was mine to keep, as she wrote, to remember that the women in this family have never bowed. Tyler received a trust of $25,000, restricted for educational use or to start a legally registered business. The trustee in charge? Me. My parents were left a 2008 Cadillac, one Margaret hadn't driven in 4 years, along with a few antique ceramic pieces and a set of philosophy books she read in her youth. No one in the room said a word. I didn't smile, but I felt my heart pound with a steady rhythm, as if she had placed her hand on my shoulder from somewhere beyond, whispering, "You did it." My mother was the first to break the silence. "There must be some mistake. Margaret would never abandon her son like this." Raymond didn't respond. He simply flipped to the next page. She wrote clearly, "Carl and Linda are people I love, but I do not trust them to preserve what I've built. I've seen them indulge their son to the point of destroying him." Tyler's face turned crimson. "What? That old woman couldn't—" Raymond read on, never looking up. "As for Tyler, if he truly wants to change, he'll need to learn how to work with responsibility and understand that no one is obligated to pay for his laziness." My father looked like he wanted to speak but held back. My mother stood abruptly, grabbing Raymond's sleeve. "You can't let one daughter take everything like this. This will be contested." Raymond gently removed her hand. "This is a legally binding will, signed by 3 witnesses and notarized. You're absolutely free to hire counsel to contest it. But I advise you to think carefully, because I also have a voice recording of Margaret explaining every single decision in her own words." I hadn't spoken a word through the entire reading, but now every eye turned to me, not with sympathy, but the desperate glint of people watching a prize slip from their hands. I looked directly at my mother and said calmly, "She already knew, and she believed I'd protect what mattered most to her." Tyler mumbled something under his breath. My mother collapsed back into her seat, breathing hard. My father said nothing, but his eyes shifted, calculating. Raymond closed the folder. "That concludes today's session. Further details will be distributed to relevant parties. And remember, what matters isn't what she left behind, but why she chose to leave it that way." I walked out of that office with a strange clarity. Not joy, not grief, just certainty. I hadn't just inherited assets, I had inherited a battle. And the people I called family weren't done with me yet. The message from my mother came in on a Monday afternoon, just as I was in a 19th floor conference room, about to present a portfolio reallocation strategy to a major client. "Our family needs to meet urgently this weekend. 3 p.m. at home. No excuses." No explanation, no warm greeting, just a command. I looked up from my screen, that familiar sting rising in my chest like acid. The kind of invitation everyone knows is really a tribunal disguised as family. I forwarded the text to Olivia, my closest friend since college and now my colleague. She replied with just one sentence. Looks like it's your turn again. I hadn't told anyone, but ever since the will reading, I'd noticed a few odd things. Margaret's former secretary, who had helped her manage financial records for over a decade, suddenly called to say someone had been asking repeatedly about the estate. A week later, Wallace, our family accountant, texted me privately. Someone tried to request statements from her investment portfolio. I'd decline, but be careful. The tension began to thicken like lead in the air. My father, Carl, formerly a corporate legal advisor for a construction firm, was never one to give up easily when control was at stake. My mother, Linda, she never accepted that I had surpassed Tyler, even in her imagination. And Tyler, the guy who burned through $70,000 in scholarship money in just 8 months, wasn't about to walk away from a fortune without a fight. By Saturday afternoon, I was driving back to our old neighborhood. The same 3-bedroom wooden house where I grew up now looked gray and hollow, like the people inside. Tyler had parked his new Jeep in the driveway. Clearly, money wasn't an issue for him. At least, not when he didn't have to earn it. As I stepped inside, my mother was already waiting in the kitchen, wearing a burgundy dress and dark red lipstick, not to welcome, but to perform. My father sat at the dining table, poker-faced, swirling bourbon in a glass. Tyler lounged on the sofa, legs up on the coffee table like he owned the place. "You're late," my mother said, voice tight as piano wire. "I'm on time," I replied, still standing. My father cleared his throat. "Samantha, this isn't an easy conversation, but it needs to happen." I folded my arms. "I'm listening." My mother pulled out a chair, sitting directly across from me. "The family is in crisis. Tyler's facing serious problems. Some of your investment accounts could help us get through this." I looked her in the eye. What kind of crisis? And what does that have to do with the assets Margaret left to me? Tyler sneered. "That was Grandma's. It's a family inheritance. She just put your name on it because she thought you'd manage it better, not to hoard it for yourself." I kept my voice steady. "So, your plan is what? I hand it all over so you can blow it gambling again?" My dad interjected, trying to sound calm. "No one's saying you should hand it all over. We're proposing a family trust. Pool the assets, I'd manage it, distribute fairly. You'd still get your share, of course. But what matters is the collective good." I gave a small laugh. "Sounds familiar? Like when you sold Grandpa's car without telling me?" Silence fell. My mother's hands tightened around each other on the table. "Let's not bring up old wounds. We needed the cash back then, to send Tyler to rehab." "Voluntary rehab, 3 weeks long with spa treatments and a hot tub," I interrupted. "And who paid that bill?" "I did." Tyler slammed his hand on the table. "You always throw that stuff in our faces. You think you're so superior. Without Mom and Dad, you'd be nothing." "Wrong. I am who I am because of Margaret, not because of you." I pulled my phone from my purse and opened a file. Want to hear her words again? The part where she explains why she left everything to me? I also have the video from the night she updated her will. My father stood up abruptly, his face red. "You trying to threaten us with that? We're family!" Family doesn't secretly file legal requests to transfer ownership of someone else's estate. I tossed a thick packet onto the table, photocopies of emails, letters, and draft lawsuits, all signed by my dad. My mother froze. Tyler turned pale. I grabbed my bag. "I've warned you. This inheritance wasn't meant to be looted. I'm not betraying anyone. I'm protecting what the woman I loved most spent her whole life building. If any of you push further, don't bother calling this a family anymore." And I walked out, leaving behind a silence so sharp, you didn't need to slam the door to hear exactly what was shattering. Grief. I hadn't planned to go as far as rummaging through my parents' house, but after that family meeting, my instincts screamed like a fire alarm. Something was off. Not just their tone or my father's calculating glances. It was the way they spoke. Too smooth. Too rehearsed, like the script had already been written. like I was the final pawn to be removed. 3 days later, I met with George, a former colleague who used to be a legal analyst at a real estate firm my father once worked with. I asked just one question. Is my father trying to restructure any assets under my name? George hesitated at first, but after I mentioned a few project names, he nodded. I can't give you internal documents, he said, but I know he's been working with a private law office in Round Rock on a new family trust. It felt like something cold and heavy poured down my spine. The next morning, I took a chance and went to my parents' office, claiming I needed to find my original birth certificate, something they'd held onto for years. My father's office hadn't changed since I was a teenager. Walnut desk, file cabinets with mechanical combo locks, dusty old bookshelves, and the smell of printer ink mixed with worn leather. I knew the drawer layout by heart. I used to be punished by being forced to reorganize them in middle school. In the drawer, labeled FP, I found a black folder handwritten with Brookshire Consolidated Trust, Internal Draft, Confidential. My heart pounded so loudly I could hear it. I opened the folder, hands shaking uncontrollably. Inside were notarized copies of assets registered under my name, Margaret's house on Lake Travis, a list of shares in the investment portfolio, and even a photo of the family jewelry appraisal. But what nearly made me sick was the internal allocation plan. Priority 1, resolve Tyler's critical debts. I kept reading. Under the section titled Plan to Handle Dispute with Samantha, there were 3 bullet points. Emotional persuasion, leverage the concept of family obligation. Invoke moral duty based on the deceased's presumed wishes. If all else fails, file a petition challenging Margaret's mental competence at time of will drafting. Basis light sedatives documented in 2021 medical file. I stood frozen. They were going to paint Margaret, a sharp, lucid woman until her final days, as mentally incompetent just to dismantle her final wishes. Quietly, I took photos of everything with my phone. Then, I carefully restored everything to its place and left the house before my mother got home from yoga. On the way back, I called my private attorney, Annette Davis, an estate and trust protection specialist. Her voice dropped when I finished telling her everything. This is more serious than I thought, she said. Samantha, they're not just after the assets, they're laying legal groundwork. What should I do first? I asked. Lock everything down. Immediately, transfer it all into an irrevocable trust under your sole control. And if necessary, go public. Family or not, this is inheritance abuse. 3 days later, I signed the documents establishing the Eleanor Margaret Trust named after my grandmother. Every asset, the house, the investment portfolio, the jewelry, even her personal keepsakes, was legally transferred into the trust. Sole trustee, me. Irrevocable, indivisible, untouchable by anyone, blood or not. That night, I got a message from my mother. Samantha, what have you done? We were just trying to help Tyler. You could have shared a little. It's family. Don't take things so far. They stared at the screen for a long time, then typed back, I'm not the one who took it too far. You and Dad did. I just finally learned how to swim. That night, I slept deeply. But in my dream, I saw Margaret standing on the porch, wind off Lake Travis tossing her silver hair. She didn't say a word, just nodded once, then turned and walked inside, as if finally she could rest. Annette Davis wasn't the kind of attorney you'd see on highway billboards or late-night TV ads. She worked quietly but precisely, like a surgical scalpel. No wasted motion, no emotional interference. As soon as I sent her the photos I'd taken from my father's office, she said just 3 words. We start now. We had exactly 4 days before the second family meeting. One I suspected was nothing more than a trap. This time, it wouldn't be theater. My parents would walk into that room with a legal ambush fully loaded, ready to force my signature the moment they saw an opening. Annette moved like she'd been preparing for this her whole life. She requested the original estate documents from Raymond, Margaret's attorney, to cross-reference every clause. She contacted two of the largest asset management firms in Austin, an independent valuation team in Vermont, and a digital security company specializing in asset access encryption. All I had to do was sign, sign, and sign. By Wednesday, we completed the formation of the Eleanor Margaret Legacy Trust, an irrevocable trust where I was the grantor, beneficiary, and sole trustee. The nearly $2 million in investments were split across 3 independent accounts under the trust name, with third-party oversight. And the Lake Travis house was reclassified as a personal cultural asset in tax filings, marked with a condition, cannot be sold or mortgaged in any form for the next 25 years. The jewelry collection, 47 pieces, some dating back to 1893, was deposited in a private bank vault in downtown Austin, registered with a unique code only I possessed. Friday afternoon, Annette and I met with Raymond at his office. A worn oak round table, sunlight slanting through a dusted window pane. He looked over the neatly clipped file in front of him and gave a slow nod. You've done what few have the courage to do, Samantha. Not just protect assets, but defend legacy and dignity. I stayed silent. Sometimes I wasn't sure if I was being brave or just building a fortress because I didn't trust anyone anymore. Do you think they'll pivot? I asked Nanette quietly. There's no legal angle left. They can scream, guilt trip, or play the victim in the media, but legally, they're locked out. She glanced at me, reading the worry rising beneath my calm. As long as you stay steady, tomorrow. I nodded, but I knew logic was never their last move. Saturday morning, I arrived at my parents' house on time. I didn't bring much, just a simple leather bag with the original trust contract and an updated asset statement. The house was quieter than usual, as if it too were holding its breath for the quake ahead. Tyler opened the door. He looked me over like he was recalibrating my character. Come in, he muttered, turning his back. The living room had been tidied unnaturally. My mother wore a dark gray suit. My father sat ready with a file in front of him, joined by a man I didn't recognize, clearly their new attorney. He didn't offer a name, just a curt nod. We won't waste time, my father began. You already know what we want. I sat, opened my bag, and said nothing. We've prepared a new asset management structure, he continued, merging Margaret's inheritance into a unified family system. You'll have partial control, of course, but oversight will remain with us, the senior heads of family. My mother nodded. This is fair. Tyler deserves a chance to rebuild. We need unity. I slid the file to the center of the table. Too late. My father frowned. Margaret's assets have been fully transferred to the Eleanor Margaret Legacy Trust, irrevocable. No one but me has authority. Their lawyer grabbed the folder, flipping pages quickly. I saw his brow furrow. His lips tightened. This is will manipulation, my mother hissed. No, I said calmly. This was executed exactly per Margaret's instructions, witnessed, notarized, and legally binding. Tyler slammed the table. You think you're some kind of princess? Mom's gone. You don't get to keep it all. I looked directly at my brother. I'm not keeping it all. I'm keeping it intact, the way she wanted. Their lawyer finally spoke, voice low. No loopholes. They've locked every door. My father stood, fists clenched. It isn't over. I stood too. I know, but I'm done. The air in the living room was so thick, I could feel every heartbeat of the people sitting there. What game are you playing? He snapped, jumping up and pointing straight at me. You turning this house into some cheap soap opera? I didn't answer. I just looked straight at my parents, the same people who had used the word family to manipulate me over and over. Now they sat there, faces pale, fists clenched. But I knew that look. They weren't heartbroken, they were furious, because they had lost control. You've broken every principle this family was built on, my mother said, her voice trembling but cold. Since when do you think you're above everyone else? Since the day I realized I don't owe my life to covering up the mistakes this family refuses to admit, I replied, eyes steady. I'm not a walking wallet. Samantha, my father growled, you're insulting the very people who raised you. Everything you have is because of Margaret, I cut in. You're the ones who blocked me from attending college out of state, who told me finance isn't for girls. You're the ones who ignored my accomplishments, but cashed every check I sent as if it was your right. Tyler snatched the file from their lawyer, waving it in my face. You're a damn snake. That inheritance was for the family. You were just holding it. No. I pulled out a copy of the will and placed it on the table. She left it to me. Explicitly. With no clause about sharing. Because she knew if she split it, it'd all end up in a casino or your next 3-minute coffee shop startup. Don't act like you're clean, Tyler screamed, leaping to his feet. When you made it big, did you share? Did you think about us? Or were you just polishing your perfect daughter act so she'd love you more? I held my ground. She loved me because I didn't lie. Because I didn't run from responsibility. Because I didn't borrow and expect others to bail me out. And what about me? His voice cracked, eyes bloodshot. If you don't help, they'll come after me. They'll destroy me. Is that what you want? I rose slowly. I don't want that. But I also won't stand by and watch her legacy burn just because our parents were too weak to say 2 words. That's enough. My mother walked toward me, her eyes pleading, no longer angry, just a twisted mix of fear, guilt, and control woven into every breath. He's your brother. He made mistakes, yes, but he's still family. You can't punish all of us for a few bad choices. I gently pulled her hand from my arm. No one's being punished. I'm just done being complicit. Their lawyer had gone silent, flipping through the documents. After a long pause, he shook his head and turned to my father. Miss Samantha's legal team secured everything under an irreversible trust. There are no errors in execution. I don't recommend pursuing litigation. It would be expensive and almost certainly a losing battle. My father looked at him, then at me. His eyes no longer angry. They were filled with bitter disappointment, like a man defeated by his own chess piece. You're just like your mother, he whispered, teeth clenched. Selfish to the core. No, I said. The difference is I won't sacrifice myself to protect something that's already rotten. My mother clasped her hands together. Samantha, we're a family. Don't turn this into a wound that can't be healed. I looked at her, and for the first time in years, I felt peace. I'm not the one who cut. You did. I walked out of that house, leaving behind a family not grieving the loss of a daughter, but a puppet, one they could no longer control. The morning after the family meeting, I got a strange phone call while sitting on the porch of my lake house on Lake Travis, a cup of coffee still untouched in my hand. The number showed a Galveston area code, a place I had never even been to. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. Is this Samantha? A deep, slightly raspy male voice asked. This is Thomas, your father's younger brother. I shot up straight. Uncle Thomas, a name my family had avoided for over 2 decades. I vaguely remembered a tall man with a kind smile who rarely showed up at Thanksgiving or Christmas. My mom used to say he didn't fit in with the family. My dad always dodged the topic, and now he was calling me? I know you have every reason not to trust me, he said, calmly, not trying to sound overly familiar. But I think it's time you knew the whole truth. Can you meet me? Today? Blue Magnolia Cafe on 6th Street. The cafe was tucked between 2 worn-out buildings, with soft yellow lighting and Polaroid pictures all over the walls. I walked in and recognized him instantly, still the same build, but older than I remembered, more gray in his hair, but the eyes. They were the same ones I'd seen as a child, lost in the middle of fake family gatherings. But you look more like Margaret than I ever expected, he said, with a soft smile. I'm sorry I couldn't make it to the funeral. I nodded. No time for pleasantries. You said there's something I need to know. He nodded and placed a thin folder on the table. Your family went bankrupt 4 years ago. They have nothing left. Everything you've seen, the cars, the house, the clothes, the vacations, has been funded by debt, credit cards, and advance mortgage draws. My face flushed. Are you sure? I'm sure, Uncle Thomas said, pushing the file toward me. I've got copies of the mortgage documents, bank statements, and credit reports from someone I trust in the industry. Even the house you grew up in. It's been refinanced twice. The last time was to cover an $80,000 debt Tyler racked up. I flipped through the folder, the numbers blurred together. Balances below minimums, credit card debts in the hundreds of thousands, and the worst of all, a loan from a non-traditional lender charging triple the federal interest limit. I looked at him. Who did they borrow from? He looked straight into my eyes. I got of Brentwell. I nearly dropped my coffee. Brentwell wasn't unfamiliar to anyone who worked in finance in Texas. It wasn't a bank. It was a group, a front for loan sharks, debt collectors, and in some cases, forced asset seizures when borrowers couldn't pay up. When did Tyler get involved? I asked, my throat tight. When he opened that lounge downtown Austin. Your parents believed in his business plan and pulled out their entire retirement savings to invest? When the bar started losing money, Tyler panicked, took out high-interest loans to cover payroll and keep the place running, then borrowed again to pay off the first loans. It spiraled from there. I sat in silence. Margaret knew some of it, he continued. But she didn't tell you everything. She didn't want to worry you. Still, she knew that if she passed away without taking action, everything she left behind would be dragged down with them. It all made sense now. The pieces I had tried to put together, little red flags, gut feelings, finally clicked. My parents weren't just greedy, they were desperate. So their goal wasn't just to save Tyler, I muttered, was to save themselves. Uncle Thomas nodded. They need you to agree to move the assets into their name so they can remortgage or sell to pay off the others. If you don't, Brentwell won't sit back quietly. Don't be surprised if you start getting followed or pressured indirectly. I stared at him, trying to suppress the fear rising in me. You say this like you've seen it happen. He looked away, eyes darkening. I lost almost everything once because I believed family comes first. But family doesn't mean sinking with someone else's mistakes. I clenched my fists. I won't let them steal what Margaret tried to protect. He gave a faint smile. Then you'll need to stay a step ahead. Not just legally, you need to prepare for what they'll do when Plan A fails. I nodded, every nerve in my body fully awake. The second meeting was held right at my lake house on Lake Travis on a drizzly Sunday afternoon. This time, I was the one who sent the invitations. No longer was it a script they wrote to manipulate me. This time, I was the one writing the script, and the rules were mine. I arranged a long walnut table in the middle of the living room, the brass pendant light casting a soft reflection off the polished surface. To my right sat Annette, my lawyer, calm and precise like a Swiss watch. To my left was Uncle Thomas, quiet but steady, like the last pillar in this family I could still trust. My parents arrived together, striding into the house as if they hadn't been shut down in the previous meeting. My mother wore a long beige wool coat, her face bare, seemingly to send a message that she no longer cared about appearances. My father wore new glasses, holding a leather briefcase, probably still clinging to hope for a deal. Tyler came last, hoodie up, dark circles under his eyes, carrying the air of someone just waiting for comfort. I didn't start with threats, I started with honesty. I invited you here today not to argue. I haven't changed my decision about Grandma Margaret's estate. Everything remains in the Eleanor Margaret Legacy Trust and will stay protected. My mother closed her eyes and sighed. Then what's the point of this meeting? Because I have a proposal, I said, placing a set of documents on the table. I won't use Grandma's inheritance to pay off anyone's debts, but I'm willing to offer financial help from my own savings with clear terms and strict limits. My father frowned. What terms? I looked at Tyler. You will check into a proper gambling rehab center for a minimum of 90 days. I've already booked a spot at the Ellison Recovery Center starting next Tuesday. If you drop out early, the support ends immediately. Tyler's eyes widened. Who do you think you are, forcing me into rehab? I didn't flinch. It's not rehab, it's a high-end treatment center. If you still want someone to save you, then you better show you're willing to save yourself first. I turned to my parents. As for you, I'll offer a one-time financial package to help you restructure your debts. But in return, you'll agree to sell the current house, use the proceeds to pay off high-interest loans, and attend financial counseling sessions with an independent advisor I choose. You want us to live like poor people? My mother snapped, voice filled with indignation. No, I want you to live like adults who take responsibility for their actions. No one said anything for a moment. I pulled out another document. Here's the breakdown of my support. The total I'm willing to offer is $75,000 from my personal savings, not the trust. My father opened his mouth to protest, but Annette stepped in, voice steady. If you agree to the conditions, we'll sign a notarized support agreement. If any terms are violated, Samantha has the right to terminate all assistance without legal obligation. The room tightened with tension. I looked back at Tyler, his eyes no longer defiant, but laced with something close to desperation. I tried to handle it on my own, he mumbled, but everything just spiraled. I don't even know how it got this bad. I know, I said gently, because you've never been held accountable. But this time is different. Uncle Thomas finally spoke. If any of you want to change, this is your chance. If not, then let Samantha live her life. Stop pulling her into this pit. My mother looked up, her once sharp eyes now dulled. You really won't forgive us? I looked at her for a long time. I'm not here to forgive or punish, I said. I'm the only one left thinking clearly in this family, and if I don't set boundaries now, we'll all lose everything. In the end, they agreed. No tears, no reconciliatory hugs, just signatures on paper. But to me, that was the only thing that held weight after years of being manipulated with empty promises. I saw them out in silence. As the door clicked shut, Uncle Thomas gently touched my shoulder. You did it. I smiled, not out of victory, but because, for the first time, I didn't feel guilty for living by my values. 6 months after the final meeting, the lake house on Lake Travis had taken on a completely different atmosphere, not from paint or furniture, but from the air inside. It was quieter, more peaceful. I called it the stillness of healing. Not an ending, but a much-needed pause after a long, bruising journey. Each morning, I started my day walking along the porch, coffee in hand, listening to the water gently lapping against the rocks. The maple trees behind the house had sprouted new leaves, signaling a new cycle. This house, Grandma Margaret's legacy, was now more than a place to live. It was where memories, values, and the boundaries I fought for were protected. Work was still busy, but I no longer chased 60-hour weeks. I had learned how to say no to insincere invitations, unnecessary meetings, and most importantly, the need to earn approval. Tyler, surprisingly, was still in recovery. The treatment center sent regular updates. They said he attended therapy sessions consistently, avoided denial, and didn't dodge responsibility. After 3 months in residential care, he transitioned to outpatient treatment and now worked as a peer coach in a rehabilitation class. I hadn't seen him since the agreement was signed, but last week I received a handwritten postcard. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm just trying not to be the kind of person who needs it anymore. My parents had also changed, though more slowly than I'd hoped. They sold the old house and moved into a smaller apartment near Walnut Creek Park. My father, Carl, worked part-time at a small law firm handling basic cases. My mother had joined a community financial counseling group, something she once called a job for failures. We didn't call every week, but we weren't in a Cold War either. We exchanged cards during holidays, checked in politely about health, and sometimes I received photos of them taking walks together. Every time I saw those, I thought sometimes change doesn't have to be dramatic, just quiet, but real. One May afternoon, I cleaned out the west storage room of the house, the one where Grandma Margaret kept old papers, antique books, and family keepsakes. Among the yellowed letters, I found a small tin box with a faded silver sticker on the lid. Samantha, open when you're ready. Inside was an old turquoise necklace, a photo of me with her from 2005, and a cream-colored envelope with delicate cursive. For Samantha, if you choose to walk alone. I sat down, hands trembling slightly as I opened the letter. My dearest Samantha, if you're reading this, it means you've made a decision not everyone has the courage to make, to protect yourself from those you once loved most. This letter isn't to tell you whether you were right or wrong. It's to remind you of something the women in our family have learned the hard way, that kindness should never come with unconditional sacrifice. Family is not a place to lose yourself. Family, when true, helps you become the best version of yourself, not someone's shadow, not someone's wallet. If, at some point, you feel lonely on this path, remember, loneliness is better than being surrounded by people who only take without appreciation. Don't sacrifice yourself to keep peace with those who don't value you. Love always. Grandma Margaret. I folded the letter, tears falling, not heavy, but healing. Every word peeled back layers I had tried to bury. She had known all along, and she had prepared me, not with money, but with the deepest understanding that boundaries are the only shield when love turns into a burden. That evening, I placed the letter in a glass frame, hung it by the fireplace. Below it, in small gold lettering, love does not mean surrender. And I knew the journey I was on, though imperfect and scarred, was the greatest thank you I could give to the woman who taught me that some legacies aren't written into wills, but into the way we hold ourselves together. Samantha's story is a powerful reminder that kindness should never be mistaken for submission. In real life, many sacrifice their well-being, finances, and inner peace in the name of family. But sometimes, true love means knowing when to say enough and having the courage to set boundaries, even if others call it selfish. Protecting a legacy isn't just about preserving wealth. It's about preserving yourself and refusing to let anyone, no matter their blood ties, define the worth of your life. What do you think of Samantha's decision? Would you be brave enough to draw the line like she did? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more true stories about family and self-worth.
I'm Camila Walker, 31 years old, living and working in Denver, Colorado. I'm a financial analyst, and I spent nearly 10 years grinding to save up $72,000, the money I planned to use as a down payment for my first home. Everything was lined up, loan approved, contract emailed. I was one step away from the dream I'd had since college. Then I saw it. A red Maserati parked in my parents' driveway, gleaming like it had just rolled out of a showroom. My younger sister, Bella, was standing next to it, latte in hand, smiling like she was filming a luxury car commercial. I hit the brakes, heart pounding in my chest. I stepped out of my beat-up Toyota Corolla, the same one I'd driven since my first job. Still wearing my wrinkled office clothes after a 13-hour shift. Bella turned, her bright blue eyes sparkling. "Isn't it sick? I got such a deal. The salesman practically gave it away." I tried to keep my voice steady. "Where did you get the money, Bella?" She shrugged, like it was nothing. "Me, Dad, and Mom talked it over. Mom said you had that emergency fund. And I really needed a car." I turned toward the front door. My parents stood there, wine glasses in hand. My mom, Lorraine, tried to offer a calm smile. "Teresa." "Camila, don't overreact. Your sister needs reliable transportation for her job interviews. You're in a better place financially, you understand, right?" My ears rang. That was my house down payment, my entire savings from the past 8 years. My dad, Howard, stepped forward, avoiding my eyes. "You're young, you'll save it again. Bella needs to restart her life." By driving a Maserati to a part-time interview at a coffee shop? Bella's eyes filled with tears, right on cue. "Are you attacking me? You always act like I'm the burden." "Not always. Just since you were 17 and haven't held a job for more than 6 months. You dropped out of college, burned through money like firewood, and now you've stolen my dream." My mother jumped in, voice pleading. "Camila, Don't be like this. You've always been the mature one, the backbone of this family. You're strong. We still need you. I clenched my phone so tightly my hand went numb. I opened my banking app. Balance: $46.17. I turned the screen toward them. This is all that's left. No one told me. No one asked. You drained my account. Bella glanced, then let out a bitter laugh. You act like you're the only victim in the world. You're good at making money. Finance is your thing. Why stress? I looked at each one of them. All of them avoided my eyes, as if I was the one in the wrong for defending myself. You didn't use my money to save anyone. You used it to buy a luxury toy for someone who's never taken responsibility for anything. Silence. I slid my phone back into my bag and turned away. I heard my mother's voice behind me. Soft, calculated. Camila, blood is thicker than numbers, family means sacrifice. I stopped, but didn't look back. I've sacrificed enough. From now on, I protect myself. I got in my car and shut the door. In the rearview mirror, Bella was posing with the car like it was a trophy, and my parents just stood there, still holding their wine. No one stepped forward. No one apologized. It was just me. An empty bank account. A broken dream. And a fury simmering like lava waiting to erupt. I left my parents' house in silence, but in my head, numbers and facts spun like a stock market crash. Part of me still couldn't believe they did it. Another part? The one that once canceled a Europe trip because Bella used my card to book her flight, knew this was just the final drop in a glass that had long since cracked. That evening, back at my rental in Inglewood, I sat in front of my laptop, frozen. A 3 p.m. email from the bank stared back at me. Withdraw from savings account. 2074. $71,892.00 initiated. By Howard Walker. I nearly bit through my lip. I opened the family financial file I'd quietly managed for years. Ever since my dad retired early at 58, I'd been the one linking credit accounts to get them better limits. I'd even co-signed a loan when my mom needed emergency eye surgery. All because they said, "We trust you the most." I logged into the bank's online portal. Every credit account tied to my name set up for the family was now showing balances. Total debt? $86,000? 0 cents. I hadn't spent a cent. Every charge originated from their zip code. Without hesitation, I called the hotline. I want to close every credit account under Camilla Walker. Effective immediately. We'll need to verify. I have my PIN account number and email authorization. Do it. It took nearly 40 minutes to revoke their access, freeze the cards, and send urgent flags to the partner banks. I even locked the Vanguard investment sub-account, where my mom had once accidentally transferred $3,000 from my retirement portfolio to hers. As soon as it was done, my phone lit up non-stop. Mom called. I ignored it. Dad called. Declined. Then Bella texted. "What the hell are you doing? My card got declined at the gas station. Mom's been crying for hours because of you. Please stop." I typed back. Family doesn't exploit. I'm not an unlimited ATM. From now on, this stops. No emojis. No with love. 10 minutes later, Dad left a voicemail, his voice tight. "Camila, we need to talk. Your mom's panicking. They're threatening to shut down my accounts. We're family. You don't take legal action against your own." I stared at the screen. My mind flashed back to a dinner when I was 25. Bella had nearly lost a contract by sending the wrong file, and I'd quietly fixed it behind the scenes. No one remembered that. But they all remembered throwing her a party when she got a new iPad. I called Eveline, our company's legal counsel, and a friend from college. "Eve, I need a quick consult. I might be dealing with financial abuse from my own family." "How much?" "Close to 6 figures, maybe more." "Camilla, File the report first thing tomorrow, and lock down every remaining access point. The next morning, I was in her office by 9 a.m. Evelyn and I spent 3 hours combing through 4 years of transactions. The list was longer than I thought. Tiny but frequent charges: $120.00 at Sephora, $300.00 for concert tickets, $85.00 for streaming services I'd never signed up for, and she looked up. You realize this doesn't end here, right? I nodded. I know, and this time, I'm not backing down. As I stepped out of her office, a new email arrived from the bank. Accounts associated with Howard and Lorraine Walker are now under review for credit misuse. Please confirm identity. I smiled, not out of revenge, but because, for the first time in years, I finally felt in control of my life. That afternoon, Mom called on FaceTime. I answered. Her face appeared. Makeup smudged. Camila, are you trying to destroy us? Your father just got denied medical financing. And I just got denied a shot at buying a home. Fair trade. I never thought you could be this cruel. It's not cruelty, Mom, it's clarity. I ended the call. 3 days later, Bella posted a story, a photo of her dashboard flashing a payment overdue warning. I sighed and turned off my phone. I had more important things to do. Saturday night, I sat in my small apartment, hands wrapped around a cup of cold tea. Outside, snow fell softly, but inside my head, the questions roared. How much did they take? For how long? And how deep does this betrayal go? I texted Eliza, my best friend since high school, now a real estate agent, and the one who had seen every turning point in my life. Less than 10 minutes later, she was at my door, holding a bag of pastries and her laptop. We're going to dig through everything, she said, setting the laptop on the table, eyes sharp like she was gearing up for a covert mission. Reese, my most trusted co-worker, joined via Zoom, bringing his background in financial fraud investigations from corporate cases. The three of us started with the auxiliary accounts I'd opened for the family when I was 24. Bryce traced data from an old banking app, while Eliza combed through transaction histories from digital wallets my mother had once convinced me to set up for easy transfers between mom and daughter. What slowly appeared on the screen was horrifying. Bryce looked up after nearly an hour of scanning. Camila, did you know that over the past 6 years, there have been more than 420 small transactions, each between $30 and $250? All from an auxiliary account under your name? I froze. No way, I review my main account monthly. They used a linked account you forgot you opened back in 2017. Transactions below a certain threshold went unnoticed. Eliza pulled up a second screen. And here, Bella's tuition from Glendale College. Over 19 grand. They used your email to confirm the payment. It clearly states, charge to card ending in 9743. Account holder, Camila Walker. I couldn't breathe. Hold on, Bryce said, his voice dropping. We just found a car loan for Bella. She's not the only name on it. The screen showed a Maserati loan contract. I stared at the bottom right corner. Camila Walker. Never signed anything. I whispered, my throat tight. Then that's a forged signature, Eliza said, gripping my shoulder. We need to bring in your lawyer. And it didn't stop there. Bryce opened a new set of data from tax records. You were falsely listed as the guarantor for a $40,000 refinance loan your parents took out on their current home. They used your social security number. Oh my God. I staggered back, dizzy. Every little favor. Every, can you help just this once, plea? They were pieces of a carefully layered scam I never thought would come from inside my own family. Eliza pulled out her phone, recording the screen. Each piece of evidence, every line item. I'm saving all of this. This is serious financial abuse. And I'm with you until the end. Bryce added. They didn't just steal your money, Camila. They stole your future. Bit by bit. using trust they never deserved. I nodded and quietly opened a drawer. The home purchase application was still there, folded, full of hope, now a bitter reminder. "Do you still have your original signature documents?" Bryce asked. "Yes." "In the safe." "Good. We'll need a handwriting expert. If we prove forgery, that's a felony." Eliza suddenly sat upright. "Camelia, do you remember that secondary credit card your mom asked for back in 2019? She said it was to collect travel points for family vacations." I squinted. "I canceled that card after 3 months. They requested a new one, had it mailed to your old address, then redirected it to themselves. And they used it to book 3 trips to Napa, Florida, and Hawaii." The screen showed receipts: Four Seasons Hotel, $2,276.00. JetBlue Airlines, $1,209.00, all under my name. I stood up, fists clenched, like someone had ripped away the last layer of protection. "This isn't just about a car. This was a calculated long-term theft." Bryce nodded. "They used your trust as a foundation, but now they're about to find out what consequences really look like." Eliza grabbed her phone. "I'm calling Evelyn. We're filing the report first thing Monday." I looked out the window. Snow still falling, quiet and cold. But inside me, something had shifted. No more fear. No more silence. Monday, 9 a.m. I arrived at the Denver Police Department carrying a USB drive with over 200 pages of evidence. Bank statements, forged contracts, signature samples, tuition confirmations, and loan documents taken out in my name that I never signed. Eliza came with me, carrying printed copies and a letter from Evelyn, our lawyer. Every detail had been carefully prepared. This time, no one was going to dismiss it as just a family matter. The officer at the front desk led me to a private room. There, I met Detective Julie McCarthy. A woman in her 40s. Irish-American. With sharp eyes, but a calm demeanor. I hadn't even said a word when she spoke first. "I've reviewed your file. This is one of the most complex cases of familial financial abuse we've seen this year." I sat down, my hands still shaking. "My family didn't just take money. They took everything, my trust, my peace. And now they'll be held accountable." I handed her the USB and supporting documents. As she started reviewing them, Eliza added, "Camila has evidence they used her name, signature, and social security number to borrow nearly $130,000 over the last 4 years, plus forged academic and tax records." Detective McCarthy nodded. "We'll initiate a formal investigation. After today, this will be moved to the Economic Crimes Division. Within 72 hours, if the evidence holds, we'll request preliminary arrest warrants." I nodded. I'm ready to sign anything necessary to move forward. That afternoon, while prepping for a quarterly meeting at work, Garrett, my department head and direct supervisor, called me into his office. "Camilla, I need to inform you of something. We received a job application today from someone named Bella Walker." I froze. "What position?" "Assistant financial analyst." She claimed to have a finance degree from UCLA and 3 years of investment firm experience in California. "That's all fake. Bella dropped out during her first year. She's never held a job longer than 3 months." Garrett nodded and handed me her application. Listed under references, my name, my corporate email, my direct office line. Every detail correct. I was suspicious, so I contacted UCLA. No record of any Bella Walker graduating. She's trying to leverage my credibility to legitimize herself. "Would you like me to forward this to the police?" "Yes. I already filed a report this morning. We need it to sit on my kitchen counter." Garrett stood, placed a hand on my shoulder. "I know this can't be easy, especially when it's your own family. But you have full support here. If you need to take a few days to deal with this personally, the company understands." I nodded, holding back tears. "Thank you. But I'm not stepping away. I've already lost too much. This job, I built on my own. That evening, Bryce arrived at my apartment with another folder. Found this while digging through old account records. I opened it, statements from Bella's private middle school and college. Camila, your name was used as a guarantor for both. The payments have been auto-deducted from a dormant account under your name that you probably didn't know existed. I sank into the couch. So while I was living on ramen to afford health insurance, they were quietly using my money to send Bella to private schools? That's not all. Bryce opened his laptop and pointed to the screen. Lorraine and Howard. Your parents filed for a mortgage refinance 2 weeks ago. In the paperwork, they listed you as a co-owner and signed. I could barely process it. Does it have my signature? Yes, and it's forged. Again. That's criminal. Document fraud, credit fraud, identity theft. Which is why I've already sent everything to Evelyn and the police. Tomorrow, they're issuing the first round of subpoenas. At that moment, my phone buzzed. Email from Detective McCarthy. We have sufficient evidence to request preliminary arrest warrants for Howard Walker, Lorraine Walker, and Bella Walker. Please report to the station by 9 a.m. tomorrow to complete additional documentation. I set the phone down and looked at Bryce. Do you think I'm being cruel? No. You're demanding justice. And if you don't stop them, who will be their next victim? The next morning, just as I stepped out of the Denver Police Department after signing off on the case documents, my phone began ringing non-stop. The first message was from my mother. Your father was just hospitalized. His blood pressure spiked. The police showing up made him collapse. Camila, this is your fault. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. Then another message flashed across the screen. If anything happens to Dad, we'll never forgive you, from Bella. You're tearing this family apart, from Mom, again. I shut off my screen. Not even 2 minutes later, the phone rang again. It was Bryce. Camila, don't panic. But you need to see this. He sent me a link. On Facebook, Bella had just posted a photo of my dad lying in an ICU bed, with the caption, Pray for my father, a man betrayed by the very daughter he raised. Help us through this difficult time. GoFundMe link below. Family, above all. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. The comments were flooded with sympathy. This is heartbreaking. How could a daughter do this to her own parents? I donated, hoping for healing. The GoFundMe had already raised nearly $12,000, 0 cents in just 4 hours. I felt like I'd been dropped into a staged play, where I'd been cast as the villain, even though I was the one who had been manipulated for years. Eliza called right after. I reported the campaign for fraud. Bryce sent screenshots of the financial abuse evidence to GoFundMe. They're reviewing it now. I scoffed. They'd gone as far as faking a hospital scene and performing public martyrdom. Are you going to respond? No. But if they push one step further, I'll speak. This time, with the truth. That afternoon, I received an email from a local reporter. Subject line: Camila Walker responds to family accusations? Attached was an invitation to share your side of the story. I didn't reply. I had more important things to do. Justice doesn't live in the media. That evening, just as I was finishing up an email to Evelyn, the doorbell rang. Eliza showed up with a bottle of wine and an envelope in hand. Someone taped this to your door. I opened it. Inside was a handwritten, scribbled note. Unsigned. You're a disgrace to the family, who sues their own parents. No one will ever love someone like you. Don't be surprised when you're all alone. I didn't freeze from hurt, just from the clarity that they weren't going to stop. Then a text from Bryce came through. Camila, they've started reaching out to your clients, spreading rumors that you're being investigated for fraud. I called Garrett immediately. He answered without delay. I'm aware. A trusted client informed us. Don't worry. I've already sent an official statement to all our partners, confirming you're not under investigation, and that the company stands firmly behind you. I took a deep breath. They're trying to twist the truth. And you're straightening it back out. Stay the course. The next morning, I walked into Evelyn's office carrying 3 new printouts. Threatening texts, social media screenshots, and the anonymous letter. She looked through them, then said calmly, "This is enough to escalate the charges to harassment, defamation and damage to personal reputation." I nodded. "Do it. And send it all to the investigators." Later that afternoon, while I was finalizing the monthly report, my mom called on video. I didn't answer. She called 3 times. Then she called Eliza, who picked up, speaker on. "Where's Camila? Does she think she's won? Tell her to look in the mirror. The whole city thinks she's an ungrateful daughter." Eliza's voice turned icy. "You're wrong. People are starting to ask, what would drive a daughter to take her own family to court? And the answer is in every piece of evidence the court now holds." Silence. Eliza hung up. "Camila, next time they try to smear you, we're not just defending. We're going public. If the media wants a story, they'll get it, but with facts, not crocodile tears." I looked at her and smiled. "They think I'm weak because I've been quiet. But they're about to find out." My silence was just the calm before the storm. Denver County Court, Friday, 10 a.m. I sat quietly in the front row of the courtroom, my victim impact statement, 6 pages long, clutched in my hands. Every word was mine, every period soaked in years of betrayal, manipulation, and the burden of responsibilities I should have never carried. My parents sat at the defendant's table. My mother, Lorraine, wore a light gray dress, her hair neatly styled, as if appearance could salvage reputation. My father, Howard, looked at least a decade older since I last saw him in the hospital. Between them, Bella sat with her head down, her once flawless makeup now stiff with tension. All 3 wore masks, but their eyes betrayed them. Fear, resentment, helplessness. Judge Reading entered the courtroom, voice clear and firm. "We are now hearing criminal case number 2024, W500. W28. Camila Walker versus Lorraine Walker, Howard Walker and Bella Walker, charged with financial fraud, identity theft, and breach of trust." The prosecutor summarized the indictment. Over 17 separate counts, with damages and losses totaling more than $298,000, 0 cents. The evidence had been reviewed thoroughly across 3 prior hearings. "The court now invites the victim to make a statement before sentencing," the judge said, looking directly at me. I stood, each step toward the podium grounded with purpose. "Your Honor, my name is Camila Walker. I'm not here today because I want to destroy my family. I'm here because my family destroyed me first." I read my statement out loud. Every transaction they stole from me, every forged loan, every car I never drove and college I never attended but silently paid for. I spoke about the home I never got to buy, the sleepless nights, and the pain of being called an ungrateful daughter while I was the only one working, paying debts and trying to hold us together. I forgave them more times than I can count. But they didn't stop. And when I finally stood up for myself, they called it betrayal. If protecting myself is a crime, then so be it. I ask this court to hold them accountable, as it would any other citizen. I stepped down. The courtroom was silent. The judge reviewed the case file. After considering all evidence, testimony, and the victim's statement, the court issues the following sentence. My heart pounded. Howard Walker and Lorraine Walker are hereby sentenced to 5 years in the Colorado State Correctional Facility, with eligibility for parole after 3 years, and full restitution of $172,800, 0 cents to the victim. Behind me, I heard my mother sob. Bella Walker is sentenced to 3 years in state prison without bail for continued identity fraud after being previously warned, and is ordered to repay $63,500, 0 cents in misappropriated funds. Bella jumped to her feet, screaming, "This is all a misunderstanding. Camila made it all up, she's just getting revenge. The judge slammed the gavel. Order. This is not a performance hall. Their attorney stepped forward with one final plea. Your Honor, my clients respectfully request that Ms. Walker submit a letter asking for leniency. They are remorseful and hope she can show mercy. All eyes turned to me. I rose. I refuse. I won't write a letter on behalf of people who aren't sorry for what they did, only sorry they got caught. I turned toward my mother. You once told me, family is supposed to be the safest place. But you turned it into the first place I ever lost my trust. The judge nodded. Noted, no recommendation for leniency. This hearing is adjourned. Court officers approached and handcuffed each defendant. My father said nothing, his head bowed. My mother murmured something I couldn't hear. Bella hissed at me through clenched teeth. I'll never forget this, Camila, you ruined everything. I didn't reply. You can't ruin what was already rotting from the inside out. When I stepped out of the courthouse, Eliza and Bryce were waiting. Eliza handed me a warm coffee. Bryce placed a hand on my shoulder. You did the right thing, and you're not alone anymore. I nodded, feeling something I hadn't in years. Lightness. Not because they were punished, but because I was finally free from the role they had forced on me. The burdened daughter. The silent fixer. For all 31 years of my life. 3 months after the trial, I stood in my new kitchen, sunlight streaming through the wide glass window, casting a golden glow across the court's countertop like honey. This 2-story house on the outskirts of Aurora had been the wallpaper on my phone for 2 years. A dream I never dared to speak out loud. Now, it was real. It was mine. Fully. Eliza had just unpacked the last box. She waved toward Bryce, who was busy setting up the bookshelf in the living room. Okay, it's official. Camila Walker is officially home. The 3 of us high-fived in the middle of the kitchen. I left. This time, no one's touching my bank account to book surprise vacations, right? Eliza raised both hands. Unless it's you taking me to Hawaii, on your own terms. We turned up the music, poured wine, and had pizza straight from the box on the floor. Bryce opened his laptop and showed me a message from Garrett. Camila, the board just approved your promotion. Welcome to your new role as Senior Risk Analyst. I stared at the message, feeling something warm swell inside me. Not pride in the title, but pride in the fact that I had proved my worth not by sacrificing myself, but by standing up for it. It took me almost a decade to build my career and just 6 weeks to nearly lose it all, I said, voice calm. But you didn't let them take it, Eliza replied. Because you had us, Bryce added. And because you remembered who you are. That afternoon, after they left, I wandered around my home. The backyard was big enough for a garden. The balcony upstairs, perfect for reading on clear days. Most importantly, there were no stolen memories here. I opened the mailbox. A handwritten, unsigned letter sat right on top. I opened it. Just a few rushed lines. Can you write a letter for leniency? Your parents are old, prison is harsher than you think. Bella, she's lost. If you won't do it for them, do it for yourself. We're still family. I folded the letter and dropped it straight into the trash as I walked inside. Family? Family doesn't forge your signature to steal your college fund. Family doesn't start fake charity campaigns with your father's hospital photo. Family doesn't treat your silence like a blank check. They were no longer my family. Just strangers with matching DNA. The next day, I accepted an invitation to speak at the State Financial Ethics Conference. My approved topic? When the scammer is your relative, financial abuse within families. Bryce and Eliza sat in the front row, clapping as I stepped on stage. Under the spotlight, I shared my story. Not as a tragedy, not as a spectacle. Just the truth. When I finished, the room was still for a beat. Then came the applause, long, thunderous. An older woman stood up, tears in her eyes. My daughter's going through the exact same thing. Thank you. Thank you for speaking out. As I stepped off the stage, I knew I had taken back my life and opened a door for others still trapped in the silence I once lived in. That night, I came home, turned on the porch light and poured myself a glass of red wine. My voicemail blinked, messages from their lawyers, trying to renegotiate restitution, pleading for compassion due to family circumstances. I deleted every one. As the screen went dark, I caught my reflection. Just a woman, 31 years old, no longer burdened, no longer apologizing, no longer broken. Just Camilla, free, strong, and no longer sorry for defending herself. I looked up at the Colorado sky. Stars glittering like quiet promises. This life? It was just beginning. And this time, no one could take it from me. Camila's story is a powerful reminder that sometimes the deepest betrayal comes from those closest to us. But through that pain, she learned to stand up, claim justice, and rebuild her life on her own terms. In real life, not all relationships can be repaired, and setting boundaries is essential to protect your peace. Forgiveness is a choice, but staying silent in the face of abuse should never be an obligation. Camilla didn't lose her family. She let go of those who never truly loved her. What do you think about Camila's journey and the choices she made? Share your thoughts below and don't forget to follow the channel for more moving, powerful stories about life and family. I was kicked out of the house on a cold October afternoon, as the rain poured down like the sky itself wanted to rip me apart. The pregnancy test stick still trembled in my hand. But not as much as my mother's eyes when she saw the 2 red lines. The kitchen, where I used to eat breakfast every morning, suddenly turned into a courtroom, and I was the criminal awaiting judgment. You're going to ruin your life? My mom's voice was sharp as a knife, cutting through every defense I tried to build. I had expected yelling, maybe blame, but I had never imagined being cut off. Forever. My name is Ivy. I'm 23, a senior in the pharmacy program at a university in Texas. All through my teenage years, I was the model child, smart, obedient, never once let my parents down. But all of it collapsed in under 3 minutes, from the moment I opened my bag, pulled out the test and stammered, I'm pregnant. My mom froze. Her eyes, always filled with pride when she boasted about my academic achievements to the neighbors, now looked at me like I was a stain on a pristine white sheet. Who is it? Who's the guy? She growled, each word breaking the air like shrapnel. I lowered my head. I knew she'd ask, but I wasn't prepared for the cruelty of the next question. Or do you not even know who the father is? I lifted my head, unable to hide the pain. Don't say that. I know who he is, but he won't be here. He left. My dad, who had been silent the whole time, suddenly slammed his hand on the table, coffee spilling over the rim. You're planning to be a single mom? While you haven't even finished school? You think this is some kind of game? I instinctively held my belly, still flat under the thin sweater. I didn't know where I found the courage, but my voice didn't shake. I'm keeping the baby, I'm not giving it up. The silence that followed was so terrifying, I thought I'd just extinguished every hope I had. That's not happening, my mom said coldly. If you insist on keeping this mistake, then you need to leave. I don't have a daughter who throws away her future like that. You're forcing me to give up my own child. I stepped back, my voice cracking. No! My dad stood up, eyes filled with fury. You chose. You're choosing that nobody over this family. I froze. My parents, the same people who stayed up all night caring for me when I was sick, who held my hand through every math problem, who once said, no matter what happens, you'll always have us, were now standing in front of me, throwing me out of the home I grew up in. No tears, no final hug, just harsh silence as I walked upstairs, stuffed a few clothes into my backpack, grabbed my nearly dead phone and my worn-out student ID. It was still raining when I stepped outside. I turned to look at the door one last time. No one stood there. No one even cared to look. The night bus arrived right on time. I got on, sat in a corner, and placed my hand on my stomach. The journey ahead had no clear route. But at least, I wasn't traveling alone anymore. I don't know how long I cried on that bus as it rolled through the cold, wet streets of Dallas. I just remembered that by the time I got off, my eyes were swollen, my hands numb from gripping the backpack too tight, and the area beneath my sweater started to ache in a strange, unfamiliar way. I had nowhere to go, no one to call. Except one person. "April, do you remember me?" I said into the phone, my voice raspy like sandpaper. "I don't have anywhere to stay tonight. I'm pregnant." Less than 15 minutes later, April's beat-up minivan pulled up by the curb, headlights cutting through the pitch-black night like a ray of hope. She jumped out of the car and wrapped me in a hug that made me break down in sobs. "Ivy, oh my God, get in, you're shaking like a leaf." April had been my freshman roommate in college, but dropped out halfway through after an unplanned pregnancy. Her family also cut her off. Now she lived in a low-income apartment complex on the south side of the city, working night shifts as a cashier at a nearby convenience store while raising her 2-year-old daughter Ellie. That night, I slept on the worn-out sofa in their cramped 2-bedroom apartment. Ellie whispered, "Auntie Ivy," before falling asleep in her mother's arms. And me, for the first time after a string of nightmares, I felt like I could breathe. The following weeks were brutal in every sense of the word. I applied to transfer my classes online so I could work and study at the same time. A small cafe called Maple Brew near the gas station hired me for the morning shift, 5 a.m. to 10 a.m., just enough time to come home, study, and watch Ellie while April worked. At night, I studied, wrote essays, and talked to my unborn child, just to stay sane. Tuition? I took out more federal loans, sinking deeper into debt. Food? We split 3 packs of instant noodles between 4 people. By the 4th month, I'd learned to brew coffee with warm tap water and eat dry sandwiches without sauce. As my belly started to show, the cafe customers became less kind. Some called me irresponsible, others asked sarcastically, "So where's the dad?" I swallowed every look of contempt like swallowing an ice cube, cold, unmelting, cutting straight to the heart. I still took ultrasound photos. I still emailed my parents with short messages. "I'm okay, my son is developing normally. Mom, please tell Dad I miss him." I never received a reply. In March, I gave birth in a public hospital after more than 26 hours of labor. April stayed by my side all night, her hand gripping mine like she was afraid I'd disappear if she let go. When that first cry rang out, my heart felt like it was being squeezed tight. I looked at the tiny, red, wrinkled baby placed on my chest, and the tears just wouldn't stop. I named him Jace. Jace had deep brown eyes like mine and soft, dark curls. He clung to me like he somehow knew the whole world had turned its back on us. Every morning, I left Jace with April and threw myself into work. Every night, I studied with him sleeping peacefully in the crib beside my desk, his steady little breaths reminding me I couldn't give up. I kept sending photos. Jace's first smile, Jace learning to roll over, his first birthday. Just 3 cupcakes, but his eyes lit up like headlights. Not a single reply, not one missed call. The day Jace took his first steps, I laughed so hard I cried when he reached out to grab a plastic spoon on the floor. I filmed it and sent it. The subject line of the email, "My son can walk now." A few days later, I got news that my dad had a mild heart attack. I called, busy signal, called again, blocked. April stood in the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron, looking at me like she already knew. "They've made their choice. You can't pull people out of their own mess, Ivy." I lowered my head. Some wounds don't bleed, but they fester like infections. That night, I held Jace as we slept on the narrow bed by the window. Outside, Dallas was wrapped in a light fog, the streetlights blurring into soft golden dots. Jace stirred and nestled his head into my neck. I whispered, "It's just the 2 of us, baby. But that's enough." That afternoon, I was only planning to clean out the closet to find a few summer clothes for Jace. May had arrived in Dallas, and the tiny apartment was stiflingly hot, the ceiling fan no match for the heavy heat. I pulled out an old denim jacket I hadn't touched all winter. As I flipped the pocket before tossing it into the donation bag, my fingers brushed against a crumpled piece of paper. A lottery ticket. I had bought it at the convenience store near Maple Brew back in December, after a draining shift. I'd only bought it on a whim because of the glowing sign that read, "Jackpot, $47 million, and then completely forgot about it. I laughed, shook my head, and was about to throw it away, but then I saw Jace's eyes. He was playing with blocks on the floor, those big round eyes looking up at me. And I froze. What's the harm in checking, right? I pulled out my phone and typed in the half-faded numbers. The website loaded slowly. My heart skipped a beat. The numbers matched. Every single one. 1, 2, 5, 7, 9, 45, 60. I had to read it at least 3 times. It felt like something was squeezing my chest, not letting me breathe. Jace crawled over curiously and placed his hand on my knee. "Mommy, are you hurt?" I couldn't answer. I could only whisper. "Jace, call Miss April, right now, sweetheart. Tell her to come here." Minutes later, April burst into the apartment still in her night shift uniform, eyes wide with panic. "What happened? Is someone hurt?" I handed her my phone. "April, I think I won the lottery." Oof. She looked at the screen, then at me, then at the crumpled ticket in my hand. "Ivy, these numbers, it's the jackpot." I nodded. 47 million before taxes. April pulled me into a hug. We both cried like babies in the middle of the sweltering living room, children's toys crunching under our feet. I was shaking. Not from fear, but because my mind couldn't process what was happening. An hour later, we were at the Texas Lottery office. The ticket was verified. The paperwork began. After taxes, I received nearly $22 million, enough to turn mine and my son's life into something entirely different. That night, after Jace fell asleep on the mattress I planned to replace with a real bed the next day, I sat across from April under the soft yellow light of the kitchen. She took my hand. "Ivy, you survived, and now you get to live." I nodded, still in disbelief. "But I can't waste this chance. I need guidance." "A financial advisor." April pulled out a worn business card from her wallet. "Alec, my cousin. He's in Austin, works as a financial advisor for young entrepreneurs. Kind, discreet. You'll need someone like him." 2 days later, I had my first meeting with Alec in a small quiet office inside a modern office building. He looked to be in his 30s, calm, polite, and so professional it actually helped me breathe easier. Alec listened as I told him everything, from the past, the baby, my parents, to the crumpled lottery ticket. He nodded, never interrupting once. Then he said, "The first thing you need to do is stay silent. Absolutely, don't share anything with anyone except me and April." I nodded. "I don't trust anyone else." "Good. Second, I'll help you create a long-term financial plan, smart investments, and legal protection. But I need you to sign an agreement to keep everything confidential for the next 3 months. Can you do that?" "Yes, as long as Jace is safe." Alec handed me a glass of water, his gaze steady. "You have no idea, Ivy. Money can change everything and everyone. You just opened a door, but behind it, there's not only light." That night, I stood by the crib watching Jace sleep, his tiny hands wrapped tightly around a worn stuffed bear. Inside me, a quiet storm was building. I knew the world was about to change, and I also knew some of the people who had once thrown me into a pit would soon try to crawl back, holding wine glasses and fake smiles. Because now, I was no longer the girl who got pregnant by accident. I was Ivy, the single mom with $22 million in her bank account. The news of my win hit the papers 3 days later. Alec had tried to delay the media, but couldn't stop a convenience store cashier from recognizing my face and selling the story to a local news site. The headline read, young single mom in Dallas, wins $47 million lottery. The photo showed me standing next to Jace outside the lottery center. My face a mix of exhaustion and panic. Below it were thousands of comments. Some were supportive, some congratulatory, but most were the kind that said, "Probably just had a baby for the welfare checks. Guess she actually won." I had prepared myself for everything, the media, the public, even strangers knocking on my door asking for help. But I wasn't prepared for the call from my mother. Her name lit up on my screen like a dagger from the past. 7 years. Not one text. Not one check-in. And now she calls? I looked at Alec. Should I answer? You want to face it. I nodded. Then answer, but don't let them flip the script and make themselves the victims. I picked up. Ivy, my mother's voice trembled like she'd just finished a marathon. It's Mom, I just saw you on the news. I said nothing. She kept going, as if afraid I'd hang up if she stopped. You've grown so much and, the little boy, he looks so much like you when you were little. His name is Jace, I replied, my voice dry. Jace, she repeated, tasting the syllables. What a beautiful name. Your father. He saw the news too. We miss you. So much. I'm sorry. I know we were wrong. Can we start over? I gave a bitter laugh. 7 years. Not a single birthday card. Not once asking if I was dead or alive. You really think one phone call is enough? Silence on the other end. Then, can we meet, have dinner, just as a family? I hesitated. Alec shook his head slightly. But I nodded. All right. Friday night. 7 p.m. Braddock's Grill. That's the place you'd choose, right? Yes, you remember. Not because of memories. Because you like expensive places. I hung up before she could respond. My heart was racing, not from emotion, but from a cold clarity slowly pulling me out of all the old wounds. Friday night. I arrived 10 minutes late. On purpose. Braddock's was still the same. Sparkling wine glasses, pristine white tablecloths, waiters in tuxedos like they were on a movie set. I wore dark jeans and a turtleneck sweater, no makeup, no jewelry, no armor, just silence, sharp as a blade. My parents were already seated. 2 glasses of red wine and a glass of water had been set out. Ivy, honey. My mother stood up, reaching out her hand. I walked over, pulled out a chair and sat down without touching her. Where's the boy? My father asked. His voice deeper than I remembered. At home, with someone who actually counts as family. She pressed her lips together, her eyes twitching slightly. My father laced his fingers and said, We've thought a lot. About what happened. About the mistakes. On both sides. Did I make a mistake? I looked him straight in the eyes. By keeping my child? By refusing to throw away his life, just to win the blind approval of my parents? No one answered. A man in a suit appeared behind them and sat down at the table without being invited. Good evening, Miss Ivy. I'm Todd Ivy, the legal representative for Mr. and Mrs. Adams. They've prepared a detailed plan to rebuild the family relationship. I laughed. You brought a lawyer to a family reunion? How touching. My mother blushed. It's just to make things clear. We can set up a trust fund for Jace. And co-invest. I looked at Todd. Did they tell you they kicked me out on the street when I was 6 months pregnant? No money, no home, not even a good luck? Todd froze. I stood up. Thank you for the dinner. But I didn't come here to sign contracts. I came to see clearly. Your love is still conditional. And I'm not buying it. I turned to leave. My mother called after me. Ivy, please. Don't be so cruel. I turned back, my gaze like ice. Cruel is letting a child grow up without knowing what his grandparents look like. I'm just being fair. That night, when I got home, Jace was sleeping soundly in April's arms. I stood there watching him, my hand unconsciously stroking his hair. April asked softly, You okay? I smiled. I'm okay, because this time I expect nothing from them, and that's the most freeing feeling in the world. Noah lowered his head. He couldn't deny it. I went on. How many times did I try to tell you? When Margaret mocked me at every family dinner, when Olivia called me a clingy shadow, when I was excluded from every important event? I waited for you to speak up. But what did you do? You told me, don't take it personally, Mom's just a little difficult. Olivia jokes like that. You chose their comfort over my truth. I didn't know it was that serious. Noah whispered almost to himself. You didn't know because you didn't want to know. I cut him off coldly. You were afraid that knowing would mean you'd have to take my side. And that meant standing up to your mom, your sister, the people who've always controlled your life. So you looked away, and I took the hits. The doors opened. I stepped out into the quiet mezzanine hallway, where large mirrors reflected two people falling apart. Noah followed, his hands trembling as if trying to hold on to something slipping away. Zoe, I'm sorry, I really am. If I had known, if I had listened to you sooner, then what? I turned and looked him in the eyes. You would have stood up for me against your mother, said no to Olivia, believed me instead of their sugar-coated poison? He didn't answer. His silence was the clearest answer I'd ever gotten. I love you, Noah. I used to love you so much it blinded me, but today, I choose to love myself more. He reached out to grab me. I stepped back. Don't turn your regret into a reason to pull me back. I'm not the woman you could ignore anymore. I've learned to live without your family's approval, and more importantly, without you. I turned and walked toward the stairs. The sound of my heels echoed sharply against the marble floor. Behind me, Noah stood frozen, his shadow stretching long and silent, like a man guilty of a crime he could no longer deny. I didn't look back. In the days that followed, news of the wedding called off mid-ceremony spread fast through San Diego's social circles. Olivia vanished from social media for nearly 2 months. She was dropped from her close friend groups, completely shunned by the groom's side. Every plan she had for social climbing went up in smoke. Margaret had her luxury condo in Bellevue repossessed by the bank. She was forced to sell her BMW and move into a smaller rental apartment, leaving behind the upscale neighborhood she used to call the elite zone. And Noah? He called me twice. I blocked his number after the third. I had lived in silence long enough. It was time to live in the sound of my own voice. And I chose not to listen to the words I once begged to say. 1 year later, I sat on the third-floor balcony, facing the endless stretch of the Pacific Ocean, waves crashing against the white rocks below. The early sunlight cast a golden hue across the water, tinting the coffee cup in my hands. The salty air and cool breeze filled my lungs, and I felt weightless. I never imagined I'd live in Santa Barbara, a place that once felt out of reach on a nurse's salary, but now I had a small apartment of my own, just a few minutes' walk from the beach, with a cozy workspace, a few green plants, and a life free of snide remarks, controlling hands, or judgmental eyes. I had rebuilt my life from the ashes. After Olivia's ruined wedding, I filed for divorce from Noah within 2 weeks. No arguments, no drawn-out process. He didn't have the courage to fight, and I had nothing left to hold on to. I left everything behind, except justice. I hired my own lawyer and worked quietly. Thanks to the evidence I had gathered earlier, Margaret was forced to return the money she had taken from Noah's account, under the agreement of private resolution to avoid criminal charges. Most of that money became my new beginning. I moved back to Southern California and got a job at a community clinic, where people knew my name, respected my skills, and didn't see me as someone who had married above her class. There, no one asked me why I got divorced. No one knew I was once Olivia Evans's sister-in-law. They only knew me as Zoe, the dedicated nurse who brought donuts every Friday morning, who volunteered for night shifts when someone's kid had a fever. And that was enough. As for the Evans family, I didn't bother to keep up, but news always found its way to me. just like the truth never stays buried. Margaret had her Bellevue condo repossessed after failing to make payments. Following the wedding scandal, she lost several business connections. Rumors spread that she had used her son's name for financial fraud. No one wanted to associate with a notorious, selfish mother-in-law. Eventually, she moved into a rental unit in the Inland Empire suburbs, far from cocktail parties and the spotlight she once stole from her son. And Olivia? From a social media princess with nearly 40,000 followers, she vanished in silence. Some say she tried to rebrand herself as an online relationship coach, but was exposed for having no credentials. Her former circles turned their backs one by one. People no longer greeted her at social events. She became a cautionary tale among the upper class. Don't fall for appearances. Remember the Evans wedding. A former friend sent me a link to a local blog article about a girl who almost married a young millionaire, now working as a retail clerk at a fitness studio. I didn't open it. I didn't need to know how Olivia was living. And Noah? I heard he switched companies, that he changed his number, left social media and lived more privately. Some say he started seeing a therapist. But to me, it's background noise, like the weather forecast in another state. I don't hate him. But I don't love him anymore either. I mourn for the girl I was, the one who loved him so much she gave up her self-respect just to be accepted. But I don't mourn the marriage, because without it, I wouldn't have learned how to stand up on my own, wouldn't have discovered the strength I once underestimated. That morning, after finishing my coffee, I went for a walk along the beach. My bare feet sank gently into the sand, the cool seawater lapping at my ankles. I took a deep breath, letting the breeze play through my hair. No one here knew I was once labeled the housekeeper at my sister-in-law's wedding. No one looked at me with judgment or pity. I was Zoe, the woman who had walked through hell and chose not to carry the ashes with her. The launch of Breaking Cycles Foundation was held on a rare, clear Saturday morning in mid-September. The small community center in West Dallas, once an old warehouse, had been renovated using our seed funding. It was now adorned with wildflowers and banners bearing the foundation's name, simple but powerful. Local media showed up, 3 TV stations, several nonprofits, potential donors, and the single mothers we had quietly supported over the past 2 months. I wore a white blouse and cream slacks, no jewelry except for a glittery purple star-shaped hair clip Jace gave me on my birthday. A plastic toy, totally mismatched with the outfit, but it was my symbol, simple, sincere, and unhidden. April stood next to me, gripping her speech notes tightly. She was nervous. Strangely, I felt completely calm. My parents arrived on time, of course they did, they were always punctual for anything involving cameras. My mother wore a Chanel dress and flawless makeup. My father's leather shoes were polished to a mirror shine. Todd, the lawyer, followed behind, clutching his usual thick folder. I greeted them with a handshake, my smile polite enough not to be called rude, but cold enough to chill the air around us. Welcome to the launch of the only thing in my life I'm truly proud of. My mother smiled sweetly. We're very proud of you too, Ivy. Didn't reply. Moments later, the center's director stepped up to the microphone and clapped his hands. Please give a warm round of applause for the founder of Breaking Cycles Foundation, Dr. Ivy Adams. Applause erupted, cameras flashing non-stop. I stepped onto the small stage. My heart wasn't racing, my hands didn't shake. There was only one thing: the truth. And it was waiting to be set free. I took a deep breath and looked straight into the crowd. 7 years ago, I was kicked out of my home. I was 6 months pregnant. Called a burden, a failure, a traitor to the family's ideals, all because I chose to keep my child. The room fell silent. I used to think I deserved it, but I was wrong. The people who abandoned me were the ones unworthy. Today, I'm not standing here as a doctor or a lottery winner. I'm standing here as a single mother. And in that role, I founded the Breaking Cycles Foundation. To end the stigma, the abandonment, and the silent violence that millions of single mothers endure every day. The applause thundered through the hall. I saw my mother's face tighten, my father sit up straight, clearly no longer comfortable. I continued. I know my parents are sitting out there. The people who never sent a birthday card to their grandson. The ones who brought a lawyer to every meeting. And today I invited them, not to reconcile, but so they could witness that I don't need them to succeed. The air thickened. Cameras zoomed in on my parents. My mother forced a smile. My father whispered something to Todd. I set the mic down and walked off the stage to roaring applause. Just as I reached the reception area, my father stepped in front of me, his voice low and tense. "What the hell was that, Ivy? Are you trying to disgrace your family in front of the media?" "I'm telling the truth. If it shames you, maybe you should ask yourself why." Todd jumped in, trying to sound neutral. "Ivy, maybe we should talk privately. There are some things we should align on to manage public reaction." "Manage?" I cut him off, voice steady. "Do you think I'm a company whose shares you can negotiate?" "Ivy," my mother interjected, her voice louder than usual. "You're destroying everything. You're pushing your parents away." "No, you were never in the center. I'm just showing the world what you did first. Turn your backs." My father's face turned red. "You ungrateful child, you'll regret this." I signaled to security. "Please escort them off the premises. If they don't cooperate, call the police." The guards stepped in. My mother protested, eyes brimming with tears. "Doing this in front of everyone, how heartless." "No. Heartless was abandoning your daughter when she needed you most. What I'm doing now is fair." They were escorted out. Cameras followed closely. I didn't shy away. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't ashamed of who I was. I was proud. April rushed up and hugged me tightly. "You just redefined what it means to flip the script, Ivy." I smiled. "And I'm not even done yet." Within 6 months of its official launch, the Breaking Cycles Foundation had supported over 170 single mothers across Texas, providing emergency housing, legal counseling, childcare services, and educational scholarships for both mothers and their children. I was no longer a name whispered in the shadows. I became a symbol of survival and resurrection. In the first week of January, I was featured in NBC's Woman of the Year segment. The reporter asked me, "What kept you from breaking down?" I answered without hesitation. "A child with eyes just like mine, and a past bitter enough to never want to look back." The story went viral. Every day the foundation's inbox overflowed with hundreds of letters from all over the country. Mothers pushed to the margins of society, young women disowned by their families, and even those who had stayed silent but now wanted to speak up. I couldn't reply to them all, but I read every word, and I cried. Not out of sadness, but because I finally understood. My pain wasn't meaningless. It was becoming shelter for others. I thought my parents would take the hint and step back. But no, they were like weeds. You cut them down, they grow right back. In the second week after the feature aired, I received a priority mail package. Inside was a reconciliation proposal, with terms so absurd I thought it was a joke. They would publicly apologize if I agreed to hand over management of the foundation to a board of trustees they selected to ensure long-term effectiveness. I laughed and tossed the papers to the floor. April picked it up, eyes wide. "Are they out of their minds? Do they think this is some kind of family business?" I shrugged. "They think money is the key to reopening family ties. But I've already changed the locks." 2 weeks later I received a voicemail from my mother. Her voice was thick with emotion, like she was starring in a soap opera. "Ivy, your father is sick. He's very sad. We can't go on like this. No matter what, we're still a family." I didn't reply, because I knew they weren't hurting because they lost me. They were hurting because they lost control. 3 days later, I saw their names on the guest list for a social investment conference where I was the keynote speaker. They still couldn't resist a room with cameras and someone with a name. This time, I came prepared. I stepped onto the stage, the spotlight hitting my face. Down below, I saw my mother in the third row, wearing a pastel silk dress, her face blank. My father sat with arms crossed, eyes tense. "I'm not standing here today because I'm special," I began, "but because I was pushed to the bottom and instead of drowning, I chose to rise. I chose to turn abandonment into strength. I chose to rewrite the story others tried to write for me." The applause crashed like waves. I lifted my head and looked directly at them. "And I choose independence. No one controls me, no one sets conditions, no one speaks for me, except me." That evening when I returned to the foundation's office, my assistant placed a thick envelope on my desk, a third negotiation proposal. Same old tactics: transfer management of the foundation in exchange for a public apology and family reconciliation. I ripped it up in front of April. "They still don't understand the simplest thing." "Which is?" she asked. "That I don't need them anymore." We laughed, not out of spite, but out of freedom. The next day I posted an entry on the foundation's website, with the first photo ever taken of me and Jace in the hospital. Me, still in a thin gown, hair matted with sweat. Dark circles under my eyes from labor. The caption read, "I wasn't chosen by my family, but I chose myself. And that's the best decision I've ever made." Jace is now 6, he can write his name, ride a bike, and loves to tell people, "My mom used to be a superhero who won the lottery and saved the world." I never correct him, because to me, he's not wrong. My parents? They're still somewhere out there, probably trying to rewrite the story in a way that makes them look better. But I no longer care. Because I've already won. Not with money, but with truth. And I don't need anyone behind me to validate my worth. I am Ivy. Single mother. Survivor. Builder. And no one gets to rewrite this chapter but me. The new house sits at the corner of a quiet street in West Dallas, not far from the community center, but far enough that I can hear the wind rustling through the maple trees each afternoon. Red-tiled roof. A backyard big enough for a swing and a small wooden climbing frame for the kids. Not fancy, not luxurious, but it's mine. The kind of home I once thought I'd never have, 7 years ago. Jace, now almost 7, ran circles around the brand new kitchen, clutching his box of Legos like it was treasure. "Mom, I get to pick any room I want. As long as you clean it yourself." I answered, placing a box of spices on the shelf. The house has 4 bedrooms. One for me, one for Jace, one for an office, and one for special guests. Single mothers in transition, who haven't found stable housing yet. This isn't just a home. It's a temporary refuge for those the world forgets. April and her daughter Ellie were the first to move in. They helped me repaint the walls, plant flowers by the door, and build a big dining table in the center of the house. After them came Maria and her son, who had lived in a car for 3 months before. Breaking cycles stepped in. Now, Maria has a stable job and is taking evening accounting classes. "Ivy," Maria said, paintbrush in hand as she spread yellow across the living room wall. "I never thought I'd ever call a place home again." "Thank you." I just smiled. "Thank you for not giving up. And this place, it belongs to all of us." The housewarming party was simple, held on a Saturday afternoon. No scented candles, no champagne. Just pizza, homemade lemonade, a few cheap balloons, and lots of laughter. Walker, Jace's best friend, dragged his mom along carrying a tray of chocolate chip cookies. Rebecca, a single mother who had survived an abusive marriage, showed up early and rolled up her sleeves to help me prep the food. The house was full of people, yet no one felt out of place. Each person carried a scar. Each had once been backed into a corner. And now, none of us were alone anymore. As the sunset painted the backyard orange, I sat on the swing with Jace in my lap. He nestled into my chest, still holding a half-eaten slice of pizza. "Mom?" Jace asked softly. "Is Grandma coming?" I looked down into those big dark eyes and took a slow breath. "No, sweetheart, they're not coming." "Why not?" "Because, sometimes, People only want to be close to you when they think you have something they can gain from. But real family doesn't work like that. Jace thought for a moment, then nodded. Then I think we already have a real family. I hugged him tight, feeling his tiny heartbeat thudding against my chest. I didn't need the world's approval, I only needed this moment, where I knew I had been right, not to break. The following week, I was invited to speak at a national conference on modern families and the post-traditional society. Part of me found it ironic. Because it was that very tradition that once tried to silence me completely. I stood before hundreds of eyes, most of them belonging to people who either didn't understand or had never experienced what we'd been through. But I wasn't nervous. I don't have a traditional family, I began. My parents didn't take me to school. They weren't there when I gave birth. They've never once asked if their grandson is okay. But I have a community. I have a friend who held me through a rainy night. I have other mothers who rebuilt their lives with me from the ashes. And I have a little boy who every morning calls me Mom in a sleepy voice full of trust. So today, I want to say this to all of you. Sometimes, family isn't where you're born, it's where you're chosen. Where love doesn't come from blood, but from loyalty. From standing beside someone when no one else does. When I returned from the conference, I found another envelope in the mailbox. No return address. Inside was a photo of me as a little girl, sitting with my mom on a picnic in Austin. On the back it read, "I didn't know how to love you the right way. But I hope you find a way to love Jace right." I'm sorry. I didn't cry. I just placed the photo on the bookshelf in the living room, next to a picture of Jace grinning ear to ear while climbing a tree for the first time. I didn't need them to come back. I didn't need the past to be rewritten. Because I now had something the past could never give me, a chosen future. A family built from choice, not obligation. That night, the house was quiet. Moonlight spilled silver across the wooden floor. I stood at the doorway, looking out at the backyard where the kids had left their sandals and a rain-soaked teddy bear. April came to stand beside me, holding 2 mugs of hot cocoa. "Your house is pretty full these days." "Yeah," I smiled, and none of them had to ask permission to stay. I took a deep breath. No more fear. No more pain. Only the peace of someone who had weathered the storm and finally understood. You don't need shared blood to be loved. Family isn't where you're born. Family is where you're allowed to be yourself. And I, Ivy, have found that family. On my own terms. Ivy's story isn't just a journey of overcoming abandonment. It's a powerful reminder that family doesn't have to be where we're born. It can be where we are loved. Unconditionally. From a single mother left out on the street, she rose to become a symbol of hope, inspiring hundreds of other women. Ivy proved that sometimes, the best things in life come from our own choices, when we have the courage to let go of the old and build a new future filled with honesty, purpose, and heart. What do you think about Ivy's journey? Do biological families always deserve forgiveness? Leave your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to follow the channel for more heartfelt and thought-provoking stories about family and life. I never forgot that day. The day everything I believed in, family, justice, the future, collapsed in a single afternoon. It all began with what seemed like a harmless sentence from my father. "Lucy, sit down, we need to talk." I thought it was about my acceptance into Yale. I imagined they would hug me, cry tears of joy, throw a celebration like in the movies. But instead, they destroyed my entire life with a single decision. A decision so cold I no longer recognized my own parents. I sat at the large dining table, covered with a white cloth, right under the crystal chandelier my mother always bragged about. On the table was a stack of acceptance letters. Yale, Stanford, Columbia, and the latest, Harvard. I still remember my hands trembling as I opened the envelope, then bursting into tears when I saw the word congratulations at the top. "Mom? Dad? I got into Harvard." I didn't try to hide my excitement, and I never imagined that moment would become one of the bitterest memories of my life. My mother walked into the kitchen, still holding a glass of red wine. She didn't say anything. She glanced at the letter in my hand, then quietly sat down. My father followed behind, took off his glasses, and sighed like he was about to announce a company bankruptcy. "Honey, we're so proud of you. But, there's something we need to tell you." His voice was oddly calm and deep, and it set off alarms in my head. I clutched the letter tightly, my heart pounding faster with each second. "Your brother Alex is working with a new startup. They're developing an AI platform for the medical market. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity." I cut him off. "Dad. What does this have to do with me?" My mother put her glass down and looked me straight in the eye. "We've decided to use your college fund to invest in Alex's company." I froze. "What?" My father nodded, like he was confirming a brilliant financial decision. "We've been following the project closely. If it succeeds, it'll secure our family's future for years." I stared at them, unable to comprehend. "But that fund was for me. You started it when I was 3. It's everything Grandpa, my uncles, and even I contributed to. How could you just give it to Alex?" My mother shook her head. "Don't be selfish, Lucy. Harvard isn't going anywhere. You can take out loans like everyone else. Alex needs capital to retain ownership of the tech." My fists clenched until they turned white. "So, you took all of my college money? How much?" Silence. I repeated, my voice simmering. "How much?" My father exhaled. "All of it, $218,000. It felt like a slap across the face. In my head, years of scattered numbers echoed. $500 from Grandpa for my 10th birthday. $1,200 from 3 summers working at the library. $3,000 from a statewide academic scholarship. All gone. I shot up, the chair crashing behind me. "Did either of you ask me? Did you even think about how I would feel?" My father snapped. "Lucy Jane Holloway, this is not the time for childish tantrums." My mother crossed her arms and said coldly, "If you can't understand what's best for the family, maybe you're not mature enough for a prestigious university." I laughed, a crooked, choking laugh. I didn't know if it was scorn or despair. What's best for the family? Or best for Alex? The guy who crashed his first company in 8 months? The guy who promised to pay back double what Mom gave him? No one answered. I looked at them, these people who once held me when I fell off my bike, who kissed me before every piano recital, who congratulated me on every science award. And then I understood. Their love came with conditions. I turned away, saying nothing, but inside me a line had been drawn. From that moment, I was no longer part of that family. I went upstairs, not to cry, but to prepare to leave what used to be my home. I shut the door, and for the first time in my life, I felt like a stranger in my own house. No knock of apology, no text, no explanation from my mother. My father was silent, as he always was after doing something cruel that he thought was right. Downstairs I heard the clinking of glasses, a soft laugh from Alex. Like nothing had just happened. I opened my desk drawer and took out the small leather wallet Grandma had given me. Inside was $200 I had just earned from tutoring the neighbor's son. Money I'd planned to use for my first Harvard hoodie. A little gift to myself. A symbol. That night, it became my entire fortune to start from zero. I didn't cry, I just felt something burning inside my chest. Not anger, not sadness, but resolve. A cold resolve that made my hands steady as I started packing. I picked up each item like dismantling a dream. No need for party dresses. No need for the blouse Mom picked for the family showcase. Only the essentials: 2 t-shirts, jeans, a pair of sneakers, laptop charger, and personal documents. Birth certificate, social security number, passport. I walked to my bookshelf, running my fingers across titles I once cherished like friends. I couldn't take them all. I chose one thin book, The Defining Decade. I figured, if ever there was a time to redefine a life, it was now. When I opened the last drawer, I saw my old phone, the one without a SIM card. I slipped it into my back pocket, just in case. The iPhone I currently used, I left on the desk, with a short note. Don't look for me, don't say I betrayed you, because you betrayed me first. I folded the letter without signing. They'd know who it was from, and they would understand. I wasn't the obedient Lucy they once knew. When I opened my door and quietly stepped down the stairs, the clock read 2:12 a.m. The house was dark, except for the faint light spilling from my father's office, where he and Alex were still discussing Series B funding strategy. I slipped through the front door without a sound, not because I feared they'd stop me, but because I didn't want to see those fake concerned faces ever again. The backyard gate wasn't locked. I slid through and took the narrow alley to the main road. The night air was freezing, but I felt hot all over. Maybe from the adrenaline. Maybe because for the first time, I was taking control of my fate. The bus stop was about 3 blocks from our house. I bought a one-way ticket to Providence, Rhode Island, the only place I knew someone, a girl I met at summer camp back in 10th grade. We weren't close, but I remembered she once said her family ran a diner and always needed extra help. I placed a fragile hope in that memory. The ticket cost $17. I slid the bills into the machine, clutching every remaining penny like a final breath underwater. I arrived in Providence around 5 o'clock in the morning, when the city was still half asleep. I sat in a cafe that had just opened, the only source of light on a long foggy street. I ordered a black coffee and a small donut, totaling $4.85. Left in my wallet was $178.15. And a question far bigger than that modest amount. How do I start over? I opened my laptop and connected to the cafe's free Wi-Fi. The screen lit up with a background photo of me and my science camp research group from last summer, back when I still believed that hard work always paid off. I opened my email and typed into the search bar, Amanda Green, Camp Discovery 2019. Luckily, I had saved her email address. I wrote, Amanda. This is Lucy, the girl you went to Camp Discovery with. You once mentioned your family owns a diner? I know it's strange reaching out after all these years, but I'm in Providence. If you need kitchen help, I'd love to lend a hand. I have experience cooking, dishwashing, and I can start any time. Hope you don't mind me asking. Lucy. I hit send. And after that, I just sat there, watching as people slowly began appearing on the street. I didn't know where the future would take me, but I knew one thing for sure: if I had to start with $200 and a deep scar in my heart, I would. Not for revenge, but to prove they bet on the wrong person. I was no longer Lucy Holloway, the practical daughter. I was Lucy, the one who would rewrite what success means. I got Amanda's reply at 6:42 in the morning. Go to Danny's Diner, corner of Clark and Jefferson, ask for my aunt, the owner, her name is Helen, tell her you're a friend of Amanda's. Good luck. I read that line 5 times, no greeting, no well wishes, but to me, it was the first lifeline in a flood. I closed my laptop, stuffed it in my backpack, and stepped out of the cafe. The cheap coffee still sat half-siphon in a paper cup, cold, bitter, like the first morning of freedom. Danny's Diner sat nestled between 2 old brick buildings, low-roofed, with a faded red sign but its door wide open. From a distance, I could see smoke rising from the kitchen vent, and the smell of bacon wafting all the way down the block. I pulled my backpack straps tighter, took a deep breath, and pushed the door open. Dine in or take out? An older woman asked, her voice raspy, her gray hair tied into a small bun. I'm not here to eat, I'm a friend of Amanda Green, she said to find. Aunt Helen? The woman stared at me for 3 seconds, then smirked slightly. I'm Helen, and Amanda must trust you if she's sending you here at this hour. She looked me up and down. Wrinkled t-shirt, dark circles under my eyes, heavy backpack, and asked, You ever worked in a kitchen? I helped cook at summer camp. Meals for 80 people each time, the rest was cleaning, mopping, scrubbing toilets. She didn't laugh, didn't look touched. Good, if you can handle hot grease, shouting, and picky customers, head to the back. Start by peeling potatoes. Danny's kitchen was nothing like the sparkling ones you see on TV. It was a world of grease, heat, and shouting like gunfire. Helen didn't use recipes. She used memory, speed, and instinct. And if you messed up, you got yelled at. Not that direction. Want to serve raw potatoes? This is a prep table, not your bedroom floor. Clean it before I slip and sue you. I got yelled at nearly every 15 minutes. But I didn't argue. I didn't walk out. I didn't cry. Within 2 days I learned to chop onions without tearing up, to carry hot plates without dropping them, and to read lips from 10 meters away when Helen signaled an order. And then her tone started changing. You're quicker than yesterday. This kid calculates portions better than my last accountant. I had never felt prouder just for being told I sliced cucumbers evenly. 1 week later, I started helping her check invoices. I discovered a supplier overcharging by 12% compared to the contract. When I pointed it out to Helen, she didn't say a word. But the next morning, I saw a new invoice on the counter, with the corrected rate. That afternoon, as I was scrubbing a tray burned black, Helen walked over and set down a glass of cold water beside me. You don't seem like one of those kids who run away from home just to rebel. I paused, looked at her. I don't want to talk about it. But I also don't want to pretend. I spoke quietly. My family took all my college money and invested it in my brother. No asking, no warning, just made a decision, like I didn't exist. She nodded. Didn't press. All right then, we'll call you Lucy, the official kitchen assistant. $300 a week plus room and board. If you do well, I'll raise it. I could barely believe my ears. I nodded over and over, throat tight. Thank you, I won't let you down. She patted my shoulder, then turned to walk away. But before she left the kitchen, she added, "Oh, and don't call me ma'am, I hate feeling old. Just call me Helen." I lived in a tiny room behind the diner, once a storage closet. A folding bed, a window the size of a hand, and a dim yellow bulb. But I'd never known a place so peaceful. Every night after my shift, I opened my laptop, not to vent on social media, but to start building a plan. Something bigger than this kitchen. Bigger than the hurt in my heart. I typed the first line of a new document. Lucy Holloway, Premium Tutoring Services, College Prep, Academic Strategy, for high school students and elite parents. I typed like my life depended on it. Because it did. My first tutoring session happened during a lunch break, at Danny's Diner, when Helen asked me to help her niece Ruby, an 11th grader, prepare for the SAT math section. The kid sat across from me, staring at a calculus problem like it was an ancient treasure map in Egyptian. I picked up a pen, broke it down into pictures and real-world examples, and after an hour, Ruby looked up, her eyes glowing. I get it now. For the first time in my life. That evening, Helen pressed $40 into my hand and said, "She's retaking the test next month. Keep teaching her, I'll pay you properly." I didn't refuse, not because of the money, but because, for the first time since I left home, I felt like I still had something valuable. My mind. Word spread quickly among the mothers in Providence. A young woman who once got into Harvard, who somehow knew how to wake up kids' brains, was now tutoring at a diner on the corner of Clark Street. The next week, I had 2 more students, then 5, then 10. Some just needed to graduate, others aimed for Brown, MIT, or Columbia. No one asked me why I was working in a diner. No one knew I used to be a Holloway. They only knew me as Lucy, the odd tutor with magic. And that was enough. I rented a tiny room near Easton High School where most of my students studied. During the day, I taught at the diner or the library. At night, I built a website. Every skill I'd learned in AP Computer Science came into play. I named the project Lumen Pathways, the Path of Light, Partly because it sounded professional, partly because I knew my own light had once been extinguished by those closest to me, and now I wanted to help others find theirs. I designed the logo, wrote ad copy, created online registration forms. Every morning before my kitchen shift, I printed flyers and handed them out at bus stops, sandwich shops, laundromats, anywhere students or parents might pass. And then it happened. A woman named Mrs. Chang, the mother of one of my students, stopped by Danny's diner. She sat at the counter, watched me wiping it down, and asked, "You were accepted into Harvard, right?" I paused for a moment, then nodded. "So why aren't you studying there?" I smiled, folded my towel, and quietly replied, "Because someone decided my future wasn't as important as someone else's dream." She looked at me for a long while, then reached into her purse and handed me a business card. "I have a group of friends, all company executives. They're always looking for guidance for their kids to get into top schools. They need someone like you. If you're ready to expand, I'll refer you." I gripped the card tightly. My heart was pounding. 3 months later, I officially left the diner. Helen didn't try to stop me. She simply said, "You're the only one who's kept this kitchen running on time for a month straight, but I know you weren't born to be a cook. Go, but don't forget where you started." I hugged her tightly. If anyone deserved to be called family, it was Helen. I moved into a small office on the second floor of an old building near downtown Boston, somewhere I could meet students and eventually hire help. The desks were second-hand, the printer was old, but when I hung the sign, Lumen Pathways Tutoring and College Prep, my chest swelled like I'd just laid the foundation for an empire. I posted a job listing in Ivy League alumni groups, scholarship forums, and student job boards. Only one requirement: you had to have been accepted into a top 20 university, be able to communicate clearly, and be kind. In the first week, I received 34 applications. I selected 5, trained them using the method I had developed: teach to the test, support students emotionally, and combine expert-level writing and interview coaching. I created a resource pack called the Lumen Kit: custom exercises per school, a tracking system, and a strategy guide for the entire application process. And most importantly, I taught them how to inspire dreams, not just deliver knowledge. Because I knew what it felt like when your dream is crushed by favoritism, by family, by reality forced upon you. Within 6 months, Lumen Pathways had over 80 students in Boston and expanded with offices in New Haven and Albany. I didn't run any ads. Everything came from word of mouth. From one mom to 10, from one kid getting into Yale to 3 more wanting to follow. Money started flowing in. But I didn't splurge. I hired a legal consultant to formalize the company, bought insurance, built a student data management system, and invested further in curriculum development. And I still didn't use the name Holloway. I signed every contract as Lucy Hart. No one knew who my parents were, no one mentioned Alex, the so-called startup genius, now failing for the 3rd time. I made myself into someone entirely new. No baggage, no shadows, only the road ahead. I never imagined a simple tutoring session would open the door that led me into the tech world, the one my brother had spectacularly failed in. That day I was invited to a new client's house. Emma Becker, a 12th grade student at Wellingham Prep. Her family was billionaire level in energy tech, and her mother, Susan, had heard about the tutor with the highest Ivy League acceptance rate on the East Coast. Emma was bright but lacked direction. While I was explaining Yale's essay structure, I happened to glance at her father's desk, where a thick printout lay with a bold title: Hydrocore Energy, Next Gen Energy Storage Proposal. I skimmed a few diagrams and specs. Within seconds, I saw the flaw. Not because I was a genius, but because I'd grown up around Alex's useless blueprints, plans full of fantasy and money-burning ideas. I had seen these same mistakes before, hidden beneath buzzwords and blind optimism. "Does your dad talk about work at home?" I asked Emma during our break. "All the time," she said, flipping her worksheet. "He's stressed. The energy storage project might be A huge loss. Is he the CEO of HydroCore? I asked, trying to sound casual. Yeah, why? I didn't respond. But that night, back at my office, I didn't open Emma's essay. I started researching HydroCore, their energy storage development, and, most importantly, the failure that was looming. 3 weeks later, I sent Susan Becker an email requesting a short meeting, not as a tutor, but as someone with a different perspective on her husband's project. She replied within 2 hours. 10 o'clock Wednesday morning, 22nd floor, HydroCore headquarters in Boston. Don't come unless you're sure you have something worth saying. I printed my technical analysis and placed it in a leather folder. That night, I didn't sleep. But not out of fear. Out of anticipation. It was the first time I wasn't just stepping out of the academic world, but walking straight into the one that once stole my future. Walter Becker's office, CEO of HydroCore, overlooked the Charles River. He wore a collared shirt without a tie, his expression cold as stone, his voice icy. I don't usually meet with people who don't have an appointment. I just need 10 minutes, I said, placing the folder on the desk. If you find it useless, I'll leave immediately. He looked at me like I'd just walked out of a high school classroom. But he opened the folder anyway. 5 minutes in, his brow relaxed. 10 minutes in, he leaned on his elbows and stared at me. Where did you study energy engineering? I didn't, but I grew up in a house where someone burned nearly $300,000 on a similar project. And ignored every warning. He said nothing. I knew I had just struck a nerve in a man who once threw money around without control. Eventually he nodded. We've considered these issues, but we haven't found any practical solution yet. You're proposing a hybrid model with tiered storage design? Yes, reallocating the storage chain and applying deep learning AI technology to manage backup energy. The initial cost is higher, but performance triples. And the risk is cut by more than half. Walter glanced at Susan. She said nothing, but her expression shifted from skeptical to intrigued. What do you want? He asked. I didn't respond right away. I opened my laptop and pulled up the second slide. HydroCore Development Proposal, Lumentech Division. I don't need a title. I need technical control, 30% equity in the energy storage division, and full authority to deploy the AI system. He raised an eyebrow. 30%? Who do you think you're talking to? To someone who's about to shut this project down if it doesn't turn a corner, I replied without blinking. Silence filled the room for nearly a minute. Finally, Walter extended his hand. 20% and you'll lead engineering alongside our current tech lead. I didn't shake his hand. Instead, I pulled up the final slide and pointed to the revenue forecast. 25%. And I'll bring not just the solution, but also the go-to-market strategy and brand repositioning. If you agree, I start tomorrow. Susan smiled. Walter nodded. We shook hands. 2 months later, HydroCore Revive was announced. The completely revamped version of next-generation energy storage technology. The media called it the biggest comeback in cleantech for 2024. My name wasn't on the headlines, but in the legal documents, I was listed as co-founder of the tech division. And I knew that was real power. As for Alex, a few weeks later, I heard he had just burned another $50,000 on an innovative blockchain education platform. My parents were still funding him, of course. Still blind. Still believing that his dream was more valuable than my reality. They had no idea that the technology Alex once claimed was his life's mission now bore a logo I personally designed. I understood something very clearly after signing the deal with HydroCore. True success isn't about standing on stage, accepting awards. It's about sitting in the shadows, running every stage, without anyone knowing your name. A few weeks later, I founded a new legal entity, Hartwell Holdings. A parent company with no website, no public office, and just a registered address in an office building in Delaware. Through Hartwell, I created 3 subsidiaries, Thorn Tech, Red Point Ventures, and New Brook Strategies. Each name was vague, clean, and on paper, completely disconnected from me. My real name appeared in no public records. Lucy Hart was just a shell. Behind it, the person running the empire quietly taking shape, was still the girl who left home with $200 and a shattered sense of trust. I began targeting small companies struggling in emerging tech sectors: renewable energy, AI-driven supply chain management, and education data. Companies most investors still doubted. But I didn't. Because I could read between the lines of every report. The desperation, the stagnation, and the untapped potential. I acquired 15% of an AI firm called Nodeflare in exchange for restructuring their product and rebranding their customer strategy. 6 months later, Nodeflare was approached by Google. I sold 8% of my shares, tripling my initial investment. Through Redpoint Ventures, I began collecting near-bankrupt ed-tech companies. Brands investors mocked as obsolete toys. But I saw opportunity for resurrection. I gathered scattered developer teams, redesigned the virtual learning platforms, applied the tutoring model I'd tested at Lumen Pathways, and relaunched under a new name, EduSpire. Within 9 months, EduSpire had over 400,000 trial users. And I, the architect behind it all, had still never appeared in public. I lived in New York, in a nameless high-rise apartment in Hudson Yards. Each morning I powered up 3 monitors and managed everything like a silent general. I made calls under aliases, signed deals through private legal firms, and sent reports via encrypted email. I stayed off social media, gave no interviews, shared no inspirational journey. I didn't need the world to thank me, I just needed them not to know who I was, so no one could drag me back into the shadow of the family I had cut off. Helen was the only one who still knew what I was doing. She called me every Sunday, asking if I was eating enough, sleeping enough, and still writing in a physical planner every morning like she taught me. "You're running a whole spider web now," I once told her, half joking. "Yeah. But don't become a spider that only knows how to trap," she said. "Have a purpose, Lucy. Otherwise you're just a fancier version of the people who once hurt you." That line stayed with me for an entire week. One October day, I got a message from my investment advisor. Montgomery Group was faltering after a risky venture into a new AI super champ led by none other than Alex Holloway. "I think you'll want to see this," the advisor said, sending me an internal financial report he'd gotten through a private source. I read it and nearly laughed out loud. Same recycled strategies, same flashy keyword-filled pitch decks, same tech loopholes I had warned them about when I was 18, and now, it was dragging Montgomery Group to the edge. I skimmed to the bottom line. Proposed Series C funding target, $48 million. I asked, "Who have they approached?" "Several funds. But lately they've been very interested in a group called Hartwell Holdings." I smirked. The game had begun. That evening, I called Helen. "I think I'm about to return to where it all started." "Home?" she asked. I paused for a few seconds. "No. Back to the wreckage that used to be called home. This time, not for forgiveness, but to finish it." Helen didn't ask anything else, she just said, "Finish it the right way, otherwise the pain will find a way to survive." I understood what she meant. I couldn't do this out of vengeance. I had to do it for justice, for principle, and for the 18-year-old girl who once walked out of that house in silence, with nothing but a backpack and a shattered sense of trust. The next day I signed an investment agreement under the name Thorn Tech Holdings, requesting a meeting with the board of Montgomery Group to explore partnership potential. No one knew who I was. All they saw was a signature and a flawless financial portfolio. I scheduled the meeting. 9 o'clock Monday morning, conference room, 34th floor, Montgomery Plaza. I wore the black suit Helen had once given me, the most elegant thing I had ever owned. I printed my presentation and placed it in a leather briefcase, then stepped into the elevator I'd never once been important enough to use 10 years ago. When the doors opened, I walked out, not as the practical daughter they once dismissed, I walked out as the person holding the fate of the very company they once sacrificed my future for. And they didn't know it yet, but they were about to. Montgomery Tower still stood tall in the financial district, just as it had 10 years ago, but the only thing left intact was the cold granite on the outside. Inside, everything had rotted from the core. They just hadn't admitted it yet. I passed through the revolving doors, black suit tailored tight, heels echoing with every step. The receptionist didn't recognize me, simply bowed and directed me to the 34th floor, where the meeting to decide the company's fate would take place. The conference room doors opened. Inside, my father, Richard Holloway, sat at the head of the table, just as he had for years. To his right, my mother Lorraine, in a moss green velvet dress, sat upright, as if she still held some shred of power. And at the end of the table, like a stain that refused to disappear, was Alex. He was hunched over his phone texting while his life burned down around him. Just a few sentences away. "Good morning, I'm Lucy Hart," I said, my voice clear through the table mic. "On behalf of Thorn Tech Holdings, I'm here to review Montgomery Group's restructuring proposal." My father stood to shake my hand, his palm damp and slightly trembling. "Thank you for coming. We're hopeful that a strategic partner can help guide the company through this challenging time." I sat down, opened my laptop and projected the first slide. A graph showing 3 consecutive quarters of stock decline. "This challenging time you speak of," I said, staring directly at him, "is in fact a collapse that was long foretold." No one said a word. I clicked to the next slide. In 2014, Montgomery poured $218,000, my entire college fund, into an energy storage project led by Alex. The project failed. No one took responsibility. No one gave answers. Alex looked up, frowning. "How do you know that number?" I leaned forward, enunciating each word. "Because that money used to be mine, because the one whose dream was stolen back then was me." The room froze. My mother gasped, barely audible. "Lucy?" "Yes," I said with a cold smile. "My full name now is Lucy Hart Holloway. But you never asked where I've been these past 10 years, did you? Because in your eyes, I was just the practical kid. Unworthy of sacrificing for your golden genius, Alex." My father opened his mouth as if to argue, but I raised my hand. "I'm not here to revisit the past. I'm here to present a choice." I advanced to the third slide. Financial reports from HydraCore, NodeFlare, and EduSpire. The 3 companies I currently operated. The net profit exceeded $400 million per year. I have the capital to save Montgomery. I have the tech, the team, and the strategy. But I'm not here to help you keep your seat. I'm here to take back what should have been mine. My father leaned back, his eyes sunken, his voice hoarse. "So what do you want?" I stood, walked to the whiteboard and wrote 3 conditions. Alex steps down from the company. No executive role, no future investments, no advisory capacity, no appearances. Richard and Lorraine Holloway retire, immediately. The board formally acknowledges that removing me from the family's future was Montgomery's greatest mistake. Alex jumped to his feet, his face beet red. "You've lost your damn mind. This is my family's company." "No. It used to be our company. But you and they chose to cut me out." I turned to the board. "And now, the only person capable of saving Montgomery is the daughter they once abandoned." My mother looked down, tears falling onto her hands. I couldn't tell if it was shame or regret. Probably both. My father stared at the list of conditions for a long time, then turned to the board. One member whispered, "We don't have another option." He nodded. For the first time in his life, he wasn't making a decision, he was simply signing to admit he'd been wrong. I picked up the pen and signed the investment agreement, then turned to leave, but before I stepped out, I paused and looked back. "Oh, one more thing." I pulled out a piece of paper. "This is a list of donations from the Lucy Hart Foundation for underprivileged students. It includes an honorary scholarship program at Providence Community College. I looked directly at my mother. The school you once said I should attend. To be realistic, it's now the place I fund with nearly $2 million a year, because I believe every kid whose dreams were crushed like mine once were, deserves a different beginning. I closed the conference room door behind me, leaving a silence so heavy, it pressed against the glass. And for the first time in 10 years, I felt a complete release. Not because I won, but because justice had finally been named. The formal signing took place on a gloomy Monday morning, as the New York sky hung thick above Montgomery Tower. I walked into the room, this time not as a petitioner, but as the one in control. On the table lay the finalized restructuring agreement, bearing 3 confirmed signatures: Richard Holloway, Lorraine Holloway, and Alexander Holloway. No one spoke as I sat down. The room was so quiet you could hear the turning of paper, the scratch of pens, and even someone quietly holding back a sigh. I didn't need any more apologies. Everything I wanted was now written in black and white. Alex was removed from the executive board and permanently banned from using the Montgomery name for fundraising. My father retired unconditionally, and my mother relinquished her seat on the founding committee. In return, I invested $70 million into Montgomery Group, under the banner of technological and market restructuring. I named the new company Montgomery Heart Technologies. Not because I wanted to keep the name of a family that once turned its back on me, but because I wanted it to stand as proof that even things that once discarded you can become the platform you rise from, on your own terms. In the first week after taking over, I cut 20% of mid-level management, most of whom were Alex's close allies. I brought in the engineering teams from HydroCore and EduSpire as the new core. I held the first public company-wide meeting in the ground floor auditorium, a space that had been collecting dust for 3 years. I stepped onto the stage. No spotlight, no background music. Just a mic in my hand. And my voice. I used to be part of the founding family here. But I was also the first person sacrificed by that very family. 10 years ago, I was forced to leave because I lacked vision. Today I return, not for revenge, but to rebuild. No one applauded, but I saw dozens of eyes locked onto me, and I knew I didn't need fanfare. I just needed them to understand. I wasn't here to reopen old wounds, but to prove that the future can be rewritten. Not with a family name, but with real value. 3 months later, Montgomery Heart Technologies secured 3 strategic partnerships with venture capital firms from Singapore, Toronto, and Frankfurt. The company's assets recovered and surpassed $500 million. The media began referring to Lucy Hart as a phenomenon, a mysterious woman behind the revival of a corporation once on the brink of collapse. I declined every interview request. Not because I feared facing the public, but because I understood. My time wasn't meant to be wasted on flashy headlines. It belonged to the students supported by the Lucy Hart Foundation, at more than 20 community colleges across the United States. And to those who, like me, were once underestimated. Those who know their worth isn't in their last name, but in how they rise from where others threw them down. One late afternoon, I received a message from an unknown number. Can we meet? Just once. No business. Just family. It was my mother, she added. Your father's been weaker lately, and Alex. It seems he might finally understand something. I didn't reply right away. I set my phone down and looked at the sky where the sun was slowly setting between skyscrapers. I remembered the night I first slept in a cheap rental in Providence, clutching my only backpack. Heart hollow, but eyes wide open. Now, I was somewhere I hadn't even dared to dream of. I texted back. We can meet. But don't expect me to come back. I don't go backward. We met at a small cafe by the Hudson River. A quiet place, no noise, no camera lights. My mother stared at me for a long time, then placed a small oak box on the table. Inside was an old photo. Me, age 5, grinning in my preschool uniform, holding a red pencil. The photo used to sit on the mantel for years, until it was replaced by one of Alex receiving an honorary award at a virtual tech summit, where he never even completed a product. I was wrong, she said, her voice trembling. Back then I thought supporting Alex was saving the family. But in the end, you were the one who brought everyone back. I said nothing. I didn't need a confession. But I did acknowledge one thing. She finally had the courage to look at the wound she had inflicted. You once asked if I saw myself in anyone in this family. She looked up. Now I think you're not like anyone. You created yourself. And maybe that's what we never understood. I nodded and stood, saying nothing more. Before walking away, I said just one thing. I'm not coming back. But I forgive you. Not for you. For myself. The day Montgomery Hart Technologies reached a $1 billion market valuation, I held the celebration where no one expected. Helen's old diner, now purchased and upgraded into a vocational training center for single mothers and school dropouts. Helen sat in the front row, her hair grayer but her eyes still sharp as razors. I'm proud of you, she said softly. Not because you're successful, but because you still carry the heart of the girl who started in this kitchen. I looked around. The place that was once a greasy fry station now glowed with light, filled with students learning culinary arts, financial literacy, and life skills. I smiled. Because I knew I had truly made it. On my own terms. And this time, no one could ever take that away from me. Lucy's story is a powerful reminder that success does not require the approval of those who once rejected you. When her family chose to sacrifice her for someone else's bigger dream, Lucy didn't fall. She started over from zero and built her own empire with intellect and resilience. She didn't seek revenge through hatred, but by becoming the best version of herself. Through that, Lucy shows us forgiveness isn't weakness. It's the ultimate strength of someone who has risen above the pain. What do you think of Lucy's choice? Would you do the same if you were in her shoes? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to follow the channel for more heartfelt stories about family and life.